Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Stars tonight together. Here everyone is singing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for May 12th, 2026. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can follow us on social media at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the red box that says sponsor this podcast, and you can set up a one-time or reoccurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank our previous donors. I am one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears. We'll be joined by K Slow briefly. And it's been a while since we've had this kind of introduction. And if you are a longtime listener of VoiceGate, you know if I'm usually jumping out ahead of time, that means that we have a guest episode. And that is the case. We are joined by the official English voice of Dragongate and longtime Dragon System historian, Jay Church, in a brief moment. And it's a really fun episode. It's the first time we've had Jay on this year with all the schedule kind of changing. We couldn't get it figured out for Unos Dos Tres back in February. And then Golden Coliseum came and went. So we decided to do what has been our traditional Golden Week show with Jay. It's a 3-hour episode plus. We cover everything to cover about in modern 2026 Dragon Gate, as well as we do touch on the Dia situation kind of intermittently. And if you're someone who is here for the gossip and really just wants to see what all else has come out in the Magnum Tokyo situation, fast forward to about the 2-hour mark. That's when we get into that. But as always, Jay is such a great guest to have on the show, and I would like to extend our thanks for having him on once again. We'll probably have him. I mean, we're right on the precipice of Kobe World season, so I think we'll have Jay back sometime in July for that. But without any more ado, I've been rambling for the last 3 minutes. Y'all hear enough of me on a weekly basis. Let's get to our conversation with Jay Church, and we will be back with you next week for a more normal episode of Open the Voice Gate. Take care, everyone. It is Golden Week, or at least Golden Week is wrapping up over in Japan, and what has kind of become a tradition for us over on Open the Voice Gate. It's about time to have our friend, the official voice of English broadcasting for Dragongate, Jay, on the show, and to do kind of a wide-reaching kind of discussion. We're going to talk about what's been going on in recent weeks. Usually when we would do this show, it would be around the time of the former Dead or Alive, but with the 2 years of schedule changes, we've landed at that it's been kind of a wrap-up show for Golden Week. But before we get into the Dragon Gate stuff, Jay, thanks for coming on again. How are you doing, bud?
Oh, pretty good. Thanks for having me. I'm actually kind of glad that We're not I'm not promoting a show this time, because usually we come on to like preview Dead or Alive and then we talk shit for 2 hours and don't do a very good job of getting people interested in watching the show. So I think the timing is a little bit better this time, but yeah, lots to talk about. So happy to be here.
So I think like first and foremost, like what we kind of want to get into on this episode, the schedule for Golden Week and Dragongate used to be a general kind of situation where you would do a Kyoto show and then Dead or Alive and then a Corkin wrapping up the week. That's not how things are, at least in 2026, with Golden Coliseum back in April, and we are fresh off the heels, actually less than 24 hours off of a big Cork and Hall the Hopeful Gate show on the 8th. But before we get into the Cork and from these Kyoto shows, we had 2 of them over the last week. Yet another kind of I know it's not phrased as a "this is Dragongate" match, but we had a kids' day put together match on the second part of the Cork the Kyoto KBS double shot that I think we want to touch on just to lead off before getting into Cork. And Jay, how exactly did this kind of come about? Was this related to like the Fittable company, or is this just a general like let's pull the kids in the audience? Because the match was Ryoya Kamei Gucci Kimura versus Rita Hamare, Cielo, and Aki. And I don't know if this is going to become the new Genki Horiguchi for like the Booker of the Year awards, but I think the DG Kyoto kids should be getting a shot for putting together a match like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the teams were a shoot. It was a lottery. They went and passed out envelopes with the pictures in it, whichever whatever the kid drew, that was the team that they made. It was it was legitimately, that was the 5th is the Children's Day holiday, so it's one of the Golden Week holidays. And I mean, it was great, incredible match. It's on YouTube for free, so if for some reason you listen to this podcast but you haven't seen it, it's on YouTube for free. So go watch it. But this was kind of like a things are going to be okay match, I think was the intended meaning behind it.
That was kind of my takeaway from it.
Yeah. Super match, really super match.
Jay, one of the things I've come back to in Dragongate this year, especially post January, because I thought the year started off so strong with the Shimizu return and then him running through Natural Vibes, and I really like that January Cork, and then after that, I think the wheels completely fell off. It seems like we're at a time in the promotion where I'm not questioning the talent on the roster, whereas in maybe 2017 or 2018, I would look around and I would go, oh, there's not a ton of depth here. There's not a ton of guys that I'm really into. Whereas in 2026, I really like the roster, but I feel like almost everybody is being used in the least interesting way possible. And if you can normally gauge a good Dragongate period by how good the Cork and Hall shows are and how interesting the heel unit is, I think we've had some pretty rough Corkin shows this year, and I think we have a pretty dire heel unit right now.
I agree with half of that. I do agree with the idea that it's not, nobody's being used in a very interesting way right now. I was thinking about this, and kind of because I knew this would be a topic. So I was thinking about the best way to phrase it, but I feel like Dragongate has become a parachute company, in the sense that, like, if you turn on a show, everybody's going to work really hard. There's probably going to be at least one really good match or great match, but there's not a whole lot that would necessarily hook somebody in to want to watch every single show. Whereas that actually used to be why people would watch Dragongate over another promotion, would be because you were rewarded for watching every show. Because there would be little threads, there'd be continuity there, but honestly, like, I was checking the Yokohama results from the show today. And I was like, you're actually like match 3 is a 6-man tag, and it's Hyokame Rita against Yoshioka Ryoya and Monte, and like Rita gets pinned. Or no, actually, this has got to be Kame. That's a mistake. But Kame gets pinned like in the third match on a house show. So like if you watched yesterday, like let's say that was like your first time watching, and you get this main event with Kami and Rita. They're double tag champions, and they got screwed out of a title shot, and they're supposed to be the best tag team in the world. So you start checking results every day, and you see that like Jackie and Rita lose on every single house show. You start to question, and you start to wonder exactly what is this company doing. So it's actually better just to drop in and watch the Gorican shows right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, we can go off in a million different directions here because I'm in no rush to really get to anything, but I've said on this podcast repeatedly, I think Love and Peace as a unit are one of the best units on paper that this company has ever put together. It reminds me of the early days of Monster Express, where you could put any combination of guys in a tag or in a trios match. And I also want to see all of those guys wrestle high-end singles matches. And I would be interested. I think those 5 guys together, the makeup of that unit is as talented of a unit as this company's put together in a very long time. I find the handling of Love and Peace and just even when Kame and Rita were Twin Gate champions and the Ben Hyo Jr. team were Triangle Gate champions at the same time, I still, as a fan more so than an analyst, would sit there and go, well, this company hates Love and Peace. They beat them like a drum until the title match, and then they might happen to win a title match here and there. But I've been so confounded by the handling of that unit, where it just seems like you have a super babyface unit with a lot of guys that are popular and that could have momentum, but they love beating Love and Peace, and I don't understand it.
I guess for me, the looking at the promotion in 2026 and like the fact that it seems that there has been, I don't want to say like booking wise, like a shift in how they handle these kinds of things, but it does definitely feel like that the one of the big trademarks of the Dragon system since 1999, where the idea is that it is a multi-axis kind of promotion, where you would have, even in 2000, you would have Sekigun, you would have Crazy Max, you would have M2K, you would have what's going on in T2P, but you would have a lot of interesting groups that would have a lot of things that to kind of offer. And I think that at least for the vast majority of the system's history, maybe going back up until maybe 2024, I would say that handling units has been something that I think that by and large the promotion more often than not gets right. You'll get your over generations every once in a while, but everything will by and large will work itself out and the units feel like healthy. And then when it's time to put down a unit, more than often that unit kind of gets put down with that. But the way that like the booking, and it's really started since the Z-Brats into Gacha Dokuro shift for me, but the way that like you have Saipatra come about, and Saipatra is just only doing stuff with Gacha Dokuro like for 4 months, and it's in and out, and you're not really getting to see Gacha Dokuro versus Decurge or Gacha Dokuro versus Love and Peace, and it just feels like so siloed, and like that you're watching like a promotion that's having like 2 different worlds kind of go on at the same time. And when you have that happening at the same time, where I mean, dating back to like Big Hug and even before that there has been an issue with like unit construction and the health of early day units that I think has like really kind of come and bit the promotion in the rear over the last 12 months, where you have a lot of shambling kind of units, and with the exception of Love and Peace and what Gucci and Aki have done in Natural Vibes, it's kind of created a very sickly unit landscape to me in some sorts of ways.
Mm. Well, with the disclaimer that there's been a lot of uh, extenuating circumstances, let's say,
The
since
DL has not been great this year.
um, going back to, I'd say, mid-October. There's been a kind of a constant flux of um, plans change, and that doesn't work for me, brother. Type of situations that has led to. So, I don't know where to start on this. I guess we need to I guess we'll get into Daya then, because this kind of starts with Daya. Um, so in actually we start before that. So with Gyuchi Aki Fuda, the Mochisuki Dojo, the three Mochisuki Dojo kids. They did a Prime Zone where they shut down Club Yanagi to end that gimmick. And then it was either right before or right after that um, they broke away from Mochisuki Dojo, or they graduated from Mochisuki Dojo. So the stuff with Vibes, or like the stuff with those guys joining it, was probably going to happen sooner, like in over like the autumn of last year. But um, you can tell when all the plans changed, because the next Prime Zone they did is when they rushed those two back together and put Club Yanagi back for one more, to do the last, to be the hosts for the last Prime Zone. Because when they did that, that was the sign that, okay, they're not going to do anything else with these guys for the rest of the year. And that's when Daya first broached the topic of leaving, um, which in hindsight makes the out of nowhere title switch to Kame and Rita make a little more sense, because I don't know if you guys were confused about that when that happened, but I thought it was a little abrupt, and it was pretty obvious that they had no idea or plans for Jackie and Rita as champions after that. But
That felt like to me at that time when they did that title switch away from D Courage. Being a Yuki Yoshioka fan, I was
mm,
immediately getting my pennant up, going like, "Oh, this can be the time. This could be the time." That was kind of my read about the situation, especially
right,
considering it was right before King of Gate last year. That it like kind
yeah,
of, at least if we're thinking about, and I think I'm kind of like a Dragon System kind of traditionalist with like booking and like what I like to see from the promotion. That's what it was tipping to me. It didn't tip me necessarily anything of Daya. It tipped me, oh dang, maybe the Yoshioka reclamation project's over and he's the ace again.
Yeah, that was where my mind went, was, okay, this is done so they can pave the way for a big Yoshioka win in Fukuoka. And also they just happen to not have any ideas for Kame and Rita. So let's throw them Demus and Monte and Daya and Mathers in 2.5 months' time. And then we can sort of pull our hair out and go, why are they not doing anything else with this tag team? But to Mike and I both, it was a Yoshioka related move. At least that's how we read it.
yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought too, but I didn't think they needed to take the. I thought, but anyway, in hindsight, that was, well, we don't know if Daya's gonna. They weren't sure if, because if someone comes in and says they're unhappy and they want to leave, that's the natural thing to do, right? Punish them and take their title away from them. But anyway, so there was that, and then a bunch of the Ryoya popped the shoulder out, Homare popped the shoulder out, Yamato got hurt in KOG. But amazingly, like the final four for KOG, it was what, Rita, Gianni, Yoshio, and Ishin. Like that was actually the planned final four, despite everything that happened, all the injuries and all the rebooking during the tournament. But yeah, then other stuff went down, and like, what was the last show I did? The last Korakuen last year was the last time I saw them in it. And at that time, the idea for Shimizu was to just come back as Yuki Shimizu and eat shit for for 6 months and then slowly get built back up. But that is not what happened. So plans changed again, and then Shimizu blew his whole knee out. So plans have changed yet again. So in the defense of things seeming haphazard and thrown together, it's because there's been a lot of curveballs and a lot of plans have changed. And like honestly, I don't think I don't think that there are set plans yet. Like I don't think that they've come back around and figured out what's happening next. Like I think that Minoru is going to go babyface, which was probably always the plan, but how we get to that has changed completely, and what happens after that has also changed completely.
So in mid-December, the idea was Shimizu's going to come back and go on some level of public humiliation tour almost. And then January, he comes back and instead he's shredded and turns heel and kind of has maybe the most consistent main event run of his career, at least for the month that he was healthy.
Yeah, so, I mean, he was just going to come back as I need to I fucked up, I know that, and I need to re-earn your trust, so I'm gonna. He was shredded already. I mean, that
Okay,
was
I guess I would hope so.
You can't do that between December and January.
It's hard to do that in 18 months like he did. I mean, the body transformation is still something to behold. It's I worried about it from the sense of, okay, if this was just a debuting wrestler, I'd be like, yeah, this guy's shredded. What a great look. But I was so used to Shimizu being Shimizu, and I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to maintain his presence in a new frame. But I think he figured it out rather quickly. I mean, I adore that UT match and that KZ singles match. I have both of those so much.
Yeah. I mean, he was. Every time I saw him, I would ask him to. You think you can keep this? And he's like, oh no, very tired, because all he had for a year, all he had to do was sit around, not drink alcohol, and lift. He was basically doing the prison diet. So, but getting back and doing 180 matches in a year and 9 shows in 9 days, we probably would have seen 2 fewer abs if he was still on the road.
Yeah. Is there anything in May 2026 that you can say about Shimizu's suspension that maybe you couldn't say in May of 2025?
Nope. So it's need to know, and the only people that needed to know were the higher ups. But I mean, he's something alcohol related, because he stressed to me that no alcohol, no more alcohol. And he's someone who liked his drink, so that could mean he had a few too many and stole 4 tons of Kit Kats, or he had a few too many and got in a scooter accident, or he had a few too many and ended up with bodies in the basement, any or somewhere in between. But and honestly, like, I wasn't, I love the guy, and I will be honest that not knowing what he did make the push a bit uncomfortable. And I've had a few fans also say that to me. More than one has said that to me, that it was like, well, we don't know what he did, so it's kind of so but yeah, well, if he did something horrible and was rewarded with a push because he got in shape, karma came and got him. But,
yes.
Don't want to think that way. You just want to hope that he keeps his head up. But it's a bad injury, and it was like every other blown out knee that we've had in Dragongate over the last 5 years. He just stepped wrong on a house show, and that was it.
Was the idea him and Kakuta headlining that April Corkin, and that ended up going to Kai instead?
No. and it's too soon for me to say anything else. Once we're
Fair.
completely past, once we're completely, once Gachidokuro has renamed and there's a different heel unit and everybody and enough time has passed, I can tell you what the plan was. But because parts of the plan may still creep up here and there, I don't want to spoil anything.
Gotcha. So
But
before we got off
no,
of the Shimizu, I'm sorry, go ahead. We were talking about Daya, but you go in please any direction that you'd like.
yeah, no, the plan was not Kikuta versus Kai for the Dreamgate at that Korakuen show. No, and Kikuta was not going to be in the cage match. Obviously, that was the Kikuta being in the cage match was the only change to the cage match, as far as I know. And Daya quit. That's it. What's the? I know that the game of internet telephone has turned into New Japan poached him. But what are the rumors about Daya?
I mean, that's the one, and that's the one from a lot
They
of
don't.
kind of directions.
New Japan doesn't poach people. They're a publicly traded company. They can't contract tamper.
But
So,
now that Daya's contract, at least from what he has said, has been put in
yes.
free and clear.
Now,
like that
is it is?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
There is a difference between New Japan made him an offer and contract tampered and tried to poach him, and New Japan having the stance to anybody that wants to go there being get free and clear and we can talk.
Which I would say kind of lines up, at least from like my suspicion and when everything was coming out from like Case and my reporting, like that's kind of where I landed on, just because of I know that Yamato after Kobe World 2024 had a reputation of going safeties off on social media about certain things, and one of the things in Daya's after the first batch of Daya news was him talking about contracts. It became very clear to me, especially with like that they weren't going to have him invest in the Super Junior immediately. Like that just was not possible with it. That
no, totally, it's totally that had nothing to do with New Japan. So Yamato got drunk and did talk shit, but essentially, so this is essentially what happened. At least as much as that I can say is what happened. Again, Daya quit because he wanted to quit. Like he wasn't. It wasn't. I'm quitting to go to New Japan, or it wasn't. New Japan told me I should quit. Like Daya leaving had again nothing to do with it. Like New Japan had nothing to do with it. He just wanted to leave, and he was ready to do the Pac thing. You know, like when Pac left WWE, there's most people when they try to leave WWE fucks with them, and eventually gets them to gets them to come back. But Pac said, "Fuck it, I'd rather not work anywhere than work here." Dai was ready to do that. The situation, as I understand it, was basically he was done. He was for whatever reasons he was done. Didn't want to work. Didn't want to be there anymore. He said I want to quit. Was he going to go and talk to Japan after that? Yeah. He probably was. But you also have to remember New Japan. The establishment New Japan was never high on Daya. So whether or not that meant that whether or not there were people in his corner that would make it worth it for them, because you also have to remember New Japan as kind of the lead promotion in the alliance. It's also a bad look if they take if wrestlers from one promotion go to they can sign, like, again, get free and clear your contract and we'll talk, but until then we're not going to talk. And they also have their own problems. Japan has their own other problems, and there's also and so this is where things start to get difficult. So again, he said I wanted to quit, and so where the contract talk comes in, what Yamato was talking about, and this is we're going to get into one of those very unique pro wrestling things that, like, if if we just told this story as there was an employee in a company who wanted to quit, and the company came back with penalties and non-competes and weird things that the employee wasn't sure about, and the employee went and got a lawyer. Normal people would say that makes perfect sense, but because it's wrestling, going and involving a lawyer for contract matters is taboo, right? And so that's where like Yamato is like, well, I had a contract. He tried to break the contract, he tried to leave before his contract was up. And it's only natural if you break a contract that you have to pay fees or penalties. So he was talking in the direction of Daya trying to quit the company with time still on his contract, is what Yamato was talking about there. He wasn't talking about contract tampering.
Which, like, not to completely veer off on its own different thing, that the whole like wrestling versus like civilian life kind of aspect of it was one of the
Real
things
life.
that yeah, was one of those things that I think I noticed, at least from when we were at a point where we were talking about it on air, and the response from it was like the whole people trying to get themselves out of bad employment contracts, and like the whole agency that has kind of like developed in the cottage industry of people that go in and are willing to be the intermediary between a person that's trying to leave their company and their previous company. And like, it's the thing that always, like, at least as it relates to this situation, when you brought up United Japan, my brain went back to it, because this was the thing that like I think Kay sometimes gets tired of me railing about sometimes, was that if this was a situation that New Japan actually was directly poaching Daya, and it was not a series of events that look like will end up with Daya and New Japan possibly down the road, but it just makes it so impossible that if you're supposed to be this NGO that exists to be the public arm of the pro wrestling industry, and that you're basically seated and supported by the industry leader, if that industry leader goes and starts poaching like things from the smaller promotions, it becomes
Yes.
not just a series of big fish versus little fish. It becomes a series of like, why in God's green earth would you want to be a part of any sort of organization that enables the predatory actions of another promotion?
Yes.
So
100%.
it goes in that way too.
Yeah, I mean, New Japan's never hasn't. I mean, the only person that like contract tampers and poaches, like the only company that does that is fucking Rossi Ogawa. Remember when Stardom poached Julia from Ice Ribbon? It was right.
Yeah, that was nasty.
It was right after Bushiroad bought them, and it ended up becoming. That's why it actually became such a big deal. Was because he was now a part of this he was part of a corporation, and he was doing contract tampering, like Showa style promoter tactics. So like, I can't think of any instance recently that where New Japan has like contract tampered or poached somebody. I know some people pointed to Jake Lee, but Jake Lee was on a freelance contract and was free and clear to do whatever. So it's not like they, they're not going to contract tamper for fucking Jake Lee anyway. But
yeah,
anyway,
pick your battles. Maybe don't risk contract tampering with Jake Lee specifically. Not worth it.
Yeah, the other thing. So first, just to finish off about Daya. So, is there a chance he shows up in New Japan? There is, but there's a couple other sets of circumstances that may make it difficult for him. One of them is actually the fact that he got dragged for involving a lawyer, the statement about we've tried to contact him, but he's only willing to communicate through his representative. Again, pro wrestling thing in that, again, if it was real life and, you know, the situation came to litigation between an employer, and the employee only communicated through their representative, that's kind of the procedure, right? I've never sued my employer or tried to get out of a contract, but I mean, to me, that seems like it would be standard. But because it's pro wrestling, that has soured his reputation a bit. Um, and in terms of settling with him, I don't know, because it can go any number of ways. It can go like, they realized that what they were that, extending it beyond whatever was not going to be productive, so they settled. Or it could be they were scared of what was going to happen with Magnum, so they decided to give Dia everything he wanted to make him shut up and go away. Or it could be they actually went and they, sat down in front of an arbitrator with, with the contract and everything, and the lawyer settled it. So, yeah, and um, let's leave it at that.
Well, do you think his
He did.
departure was more of him not wanting to be in Dragongate specifically, or his departure was
Yes.
okay? So what do you
Yes.
see his future options as being?
Um, all I heard was if it means he doesn't wrestle anymore, he's fine with it.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't hear it directly from him, but it was phrased to me that, like, so I was like, is he going to go to New Japan? And you're like, maybe, but he just, if it's a matter between staying and wrestling here or not, or doing something else in life, he would rather go do something else.
Well, let me ask you
and-
this, because I always remember your phrasing of it from one of the first times we had you on, and we were talking. This was during the pandemic, and I don't remember why. Maybe it just got put on the network, but we were talking about the Shima Cyber Kong match from 2012, and we were talking about Okamura, and you had made the comment that since the May 2018 split, you said the mental health of the company had improved so
Yeah, I did say
much,
that.
and now
I did say that.
yes, and now we're 8 years beyond that, and I don't know if it would be, and this is a genuine question, I don't know if it would be appropriate to document the regime change as August of 2021 when Ryo Saito was publicly named general manager, but whatever timeline you want to use.
You could.
Yeah, we've existed now in this current structure for quite a while. How do you feel the mental health of the company is right now?
I can't speak. Okay, let me think. I can speak to my mental health with the company,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been here long enough now to have mental health with the company. Um, I don't know, man. Like, uh, my morale has not been good for a while now, and um, there's I'm going to say this. I'm trying to think of a. Sorry, I'm navigating the political way to say this. So, um, okay. So, my pay for doing commentary was something that was never an issue to me, because it just I have another job. I'm single. I don't have a lot of. I don't. The more money I get, the more I'm going to spend it on frivolous things anyway. So, like, pay was never a big issue for me, and On paper, it still isn't. But also, like, the cost of various things has gone up. So, like, excuse me. So let's just say, like, when I have to go to Fukuoka and stay overnight, I'm especially now because everybody goes home after Fukuoka, and I'm just kind of left, to stay overnight in the hotel until first flight or first train out. So that means I have to feed myself, I have to entertain myself, and cost of living has risen to the point where having to feed myself and entertain myself on my commentator salary ends up with a considerably less take home than it did before, which is, again, not really an issue because I only stay overnight twice a year, and for the most part, Korakuen shows are a 12-minute train ride for me. It's not an issue. But it's also, like, never been discussed with me about salary. Like, there hasn't been like, are you okay, or like, oh, sorry, we can't give you more, or anything like that. And which I would hope, because we're like in year 7 now. Like, it's going to be 7 years pretty soon. So, like, that's kind of a conversation you want to have, right? Or at least would expect to have. Um, Number two is the fact that we're also in year 7, and there's been, like, no feedback loop. And I might just hyper focus on this because feedback loop and evaluation and onboarding and, you know, um, this is the word we use in the corporate setting, but it's like psychological safety of employees and team members is kind of the core function of my job. So I'm hyper focused on it, and always, stress how important it is when I'm giving trainings and things like that. And, like, there's no there's never, like, I haven't received a piece of feedback, like, from someone, from Gaura, from Dragongate, from anybody. Like, I've never received a piece of feedback on, the producer will come over and move the microphone closer to my mouth if he thinks I'm talking too quiet. But, like, that's the extent of the feedback I've received, and that's a little, it, that's draining because you never know if you're doing a good job or if you're doing a bad job or what. But, like, the real breaking, like the thing that kind of flipped the switch for me is, um yeah, like I just said, and people may know, this is my main job. I have a day job that, particularly for Cork and Hall shows are always on weekdays. And I know I've just planted a seed about, you're going to ask me about Sunday Cork and Hall shows later. So ask me about it later. We can talk about it. But Cork and Hall shows are on weekdays. I work on weekdays. So, I have to either, I have to put it in my calendar that I've got commentary that day. So please don't book a meeting after 4 p.m. But, and the assumption, and nobody ever, like, confirms with me, like, they don't come to me in January and say, okay, these are the dates for the year, are you okay with this? Like, there has never been a confirmation of my schedule. And but because I know the schedule, it's okay. Like, we have Cork and Hall dates all the way through until what, March of next year. So, like, I know the dates that I'm working. I can put them in my calendar. I can block my calendar for that. But last year, they added the Miyane show it got added to the Korakuen schedule. Whatever it was, like in June or July. And in August, yeah, at Dangerous Gate, I was talking. We were going to shoot the video for the live schedule for September, and they had the cue card, and it had Date of Miyane English written on it. And I was like, wait a minute, nobody, it's like, this is added to this. This is in addition to my work schedule, and nobody bothered to check with me ahead of time as to whether, like, this was okay, or as whether I can do it. And I don't know, like that bothered me a lot, and it may have just been like the final small thing that tipped me over and kind of put me into the okay, yeah, I understand it. Overworked, underpaid, and there's no feedback. There's no, like it's not a nurturing or rewarding environment, or at least it hasn't been for me. And um, I feel like since that day, every every almost every show I've had either a conversation with someone where they've told me about their troubles and it's brought me down, or I've had an interaction with someone that has ended up, whether for whatever it is that's kind of brought me down before going on the air. So like it feels, if I'm a gauge, if I'm the gauge for the mental health of the company, I think I would say morale is probably low right now. But because fine line between loyalty, stupidity, and really, wanting to make it work, we all continue to do it.
Do you feel like the wrestlers that might have low morale are experiencing something very similar to you in terms of lack of feedback and maybe lack of financial growth, or are there separate issues that are plaguing the roster itself right now?
um I okay. How can I say this? I'm going to try and say this diplomatically. I think in general, there is a large subset of the population that is really tired of money loving old people.
Accurate.
And yeah, yeah. And I would say that the pro wrestling world is no different right now. That's, yeah, that's how I feel. I don't want to say I'm speaking for everybody, or that
Sure.
I'm accurately giving the total picture of how everybody feels. But that's that's how I feel, and I don't necessarily think that I'm off the mark on how I feel.
And I guess like for me, for like my general like stance towards wrestling and like what I have found myself kind of going more towards, and like what has like piqued my interest of like the last like few years versus where I was kind of before, it has led at least me to kind of a place, and I can't speak for Case here, that so we've done our Michinoku Pro project now for 15 episodes now since last March, and it's enabled us to, at least as much as we really can in our position, be able to get really deep into the weeds of the rise of a promotion, and especially like talking about like the 90s and the emerging indie landscape in Japan at that time. And one of the things that like that's like glaring now at us, that we're not close to this point yet, but we know that it's coming, is the Osaka Pro split for this, and how that happens in a 7-year kind of time period from when they form Michinoku Pro to when everyone gets sick of Sasuke and departs. And I take a step back and I go like, wow, okay, so the first classes of Torimon Gym and the first debuts were were in 97. So we're in year 29 of 30. And one of the things that I've kind of, and I've presented it sometimes on this show, is like the existential crisis of the generation change, and the idea of you've reached a certain point where essentially, like if you are your Don Fuji or Dragongate, you're approaching year 30 very kind of quickly, and you're in your 50s and 60s. And how does a promotion kind of balance these kinds of figures? That's not to say anything untoward about those two. It's just using them kind of as an example. When you have a roster with people like Koki Oshima and Daiki Tsujiguchi, who have been trainees for years and are trying to claw their way onto the roster, and that some of that is not being ready for that, but like you have just this long kind of breadth of people of where they are kind of in their careers. And it makes me kind of wonder in like some ways that if you go and look at like what was happening with New Japan in the 80s and the 90s, and really what happened after Baba died in 99 for All Japan and that kind of thing, is that
The same day as the
well,
first Storyman show.
yep, same day, January 31st, 1999. Yeah. And it kind of makes me wonder, like, we are clearly in the depths of this kind of change here that we're like witnessing. And
Mm.
it leaves me kind of wondering, like, at like a certain point, did did the promotion not anticipate like this kind of struggle like happening, or if it's just you're looking at what's immediately in front of you and not worrying what may come, what ball might come get lobbed at you years down the road here, if that makes any sense.
Isn't it obvious though?
Yeah, yeah, I guess it's me kind of
So okay,
verbalizing it.
I'm gonna. I think one of the common comments when the Dia thing, when the Dia news first broke, was I saw a lot of comments of people saying like, "Well, Dragon Gate will be fine without him because they always seem to you know have a new debut some new great young talent." And um, I don't know, Oshima might be that. Yeah, I don't know, probably not. But like the problem is that those great young talents are not sticking around to be the mid card. That the age of the company, you're either over 45 or you're under 30. And like, the reason the company's in the state, or at least it feels like it's in the state it's in right now, is the inability to develop or keep talent that debuted post 2006, pre 2016, or even pre 2020. Think about these, like, these. Oh yeah, what was the match yesterday? The Yeah, like this. Not the vibes. Hulk versus Hulk, Kagetora, Owashi, Punch, Takashi. Like, or the Horiguchi Kondo Mochizuki Fuji match. Like, this should be where, like, Eita, T-Hawk, Lindemann, Yamamura, not, like, that generation of guys should be the um like the spot where that guys like Susumu and Saito, like there's no Jimmy's generation right now in between that fell in between, like there's Team Veteran, who are the old guys.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was the Jimmys, that was like
Second gen.
the second generation, and then there were the young guys, and then there was like the millennials generation that were the super young guys. So if we were using that now, like the millennials would be like Homare, Cielo, Ryoya, and then there would be Love and Peace, Gajidokuro, D Courage would be the current generation. But then you'd have T-Hawk, Eita, UT, Shimizu would be like the Jimmy's generation, where they were mostly in these pre-intermission 6-man, 8-man tag team matches. But if the time came, you can step them up and put them in main events and put them in important situations. And you don't end up with, like, or it doesn't end up being a situation like it's like Ryoya versus Horiguchi of Fukuoka, where it's just like kind of sad. And like feeling the effects of that. And if it comes down to, and also, I think we talked about this when SB and Takuma left, but the longtime fans, or fans that are going to sit and think that can never rest easy, or can't watch a show, or can't like a wrestler without having a small pit in their stomach. Wonder, like
Yeah.
if
Oh, absolutely.
if if I don't know, like if Ryoya hurt his shoulder again, like if Ryoya, like you're never sure, like did he really hurt his shoulder or was something going on?
And I feel like that
And
kind of goes into an overall optics kind of
yeah,
situation
yeah,
that I feel like until Shimizu came back, like Jay, my Japanese is not great. I never try to cast any false airs about my fluency, but I would go and I would search Big Boss Shimizu in katakana and kanji every once in a while, and it would just be scores of native fans going like, "Oh, we are." I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what's happened to Shimizu, or like I wish we
mm,
would hear something about Shimizu. And when you see this happening from one and then happening for another, and then it becoming a
yeah,
line of disappointment after disappointment, it just kind of you I for a lack of better analogy, like you just like it's like you stick your hand into the the crab tank so many times you're going to get your hand snapped with it, and it kind of makes it hard,
mm,
I feel like, optically to have the same kind of investment where like
yes,
I've been a Tozawa guy my entire kind of fandom with it, and that departure in some ways, other than he didn't get to the top of the final mountain and all of that, there was a level of closure, and that felt like kind of appropriate time of departure in
mm,
theory. Certainly would be helping out now with like that millennials trueborn kind of gap that we have here, but that felt right. Like it felt like that it was appropriate at that time. That never happens these days. That
it
never
does.
happens,
It's
so
actually
why get
it's
invested?
it's actually only happened twice. Tozawa and Shingo, the two that you know, this the two that they didn't hide it for, right? And even Shingo, like, um, anyway. But see, and that's and the thing about Daya, I think Daya is the worst one to date out of everybody that has left this company. And there's been a lot of people leaving this company under suspicious circumstances, but Daya is by far the worst one because let's say someone like Kaito Ishida, he was heel. He was always seemed like he was unhappy, and he was like it seemed like he was someone that was obnoxious and more trouble than he's worth. So him disappearing like that, you know, doesn't really matter. SB and Takuma, well, they were young. They went and they did something stupid. They were stupid kids. They'll learn the way of society soon, right? It's easy to it's been very easy to put, I don't want to say blame, but it's been very easy to write off everybody else that's left as being as sharing, at least sharing part of the problem. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Whereas
Oh yeah,
Daya,
yeah.
Daya is the the successor to Dragon Kid.
Yeah, the dragon
He's
lineage
someone,
ends with him now.
and he was one of the ones that when he was Brave Gate champion, he said, you know, I'm going to be, I'm the one that's going to carry this division into the future. And there's been a lot of people that have said that because they've all left. I'm never going to leave. And when he got to King of Gate, he was like, you know, I'm the chosen one. I'm going to be, I'm the protector. I'm the breadwinner for the Dragon Gate family now. He said all of these things, was super babyface, was popular with kids, wasn't a heel, wasn't someone that could, he was pushed. Was he someone that was under pushed or over pushed? That's different. But he wasn't someone that was perpetually held under or anything like that. So where you could be like, he should, you could think, well, he was underutilized, he should get out anyway. Like there was never any of that for Daya. He was one of the pillars going forward, and something happened that made him want to leave and not work anywhere. If it meant not working, even if it, as long as he wasn't working here, he wanted to leave. And they didn't give fans closure to it, because you know what, if he wanted to leave, like, that's fine. People quit their jobs all the time. People leave wrestling promotions all the time. There's nothing inherently wrong. People get tired of their jobs all the time. Dragon Dia leaving the company is not the problem. It's Dragon Dia vanishing from cards, and there being radio silence until he broke the silence himself. Like, if they and they it was known that last day, February 28th, was the day was the last date that he was obligated for. They knew that was his last date. That they could have, after the Twin Gate match in Fukuoka, backstage he says, I realized today that I still have a lot of growing to do, and so I'm going to go freelance. And then that last show in Osaka, do a send off match, let him say goodbye, and then he doesn't come back. And then he leaves. But fans get to send him off. Fans get you get the appearance of he's going to get stronger, and we can watch him in the next place he goes, whether it's in New Japan or another company. We can go like with Shingo. Shingo can go to New Japan, become IWGP champion, and we can say he's one of ours. We sent him there and he did it. Look at how the when Takeshita won the G1 and they had the video from the DDT audience getting the news, and they went crazy. Like, yeah, their young ace left the company. I know he still has a contract there, but he left the company and went to New Japan. But because he was sent off in a positive way, we can be proud of him. But now, if he shows up at at Dominion or whatever the next big New Japan show is, we're just gonna feel bad about it now, because it's gonna be like, and that is. I'm not necessarily saying that these types of things are running off fans, but it certainly is why the numbers are not increasing.
Yeah. No, it definitely feels like, at least, that anytime that there seems to be like a level of like that you would assume to be momentum, or like at least critically, like you used to be like, okay, if we feel like the shows are pretty good and that the response is pretty strong, usually there, at least at a certain point, was a correlation with attendance, and we are just not in that world, and we are so far away from that world at this point that
it also gets amplified by the fact that the creative isn't good. Like, if there were great matches, great angles, great storylines, and other. I know that there's going to be I know that there's probably a sentiment that like the newer, younger generation of wrestlers, they didn't get over, or they're not working hard enough or not doing enough. And God, I hate the young guys need to work harder. It's like, I'm so sick of hearing that. That like all of these guys even Minora, who, like, they're popular. They sell merchandise. They have fans. They have people that are coming to shows to see them, but they've been there's been no reason to, I don't know, like been there hasn't been a reason to, like, cheer for them or be a fan or come and buy a ticket to see them, because they're just gonna, like, oh, they're gonna go and they're gonna lose to, we're gonna get behind like, I'm a big fan of Yoshiki Kato, so I'm gonna go, they won the Asia Tag they won the Asia Tag title, so I'm gonna go to Korakuen Hall and cheer for them, and they're gonna lose to, Don Fuji and Mochizuki. Why bother getting invested? But
Well,
yeah.
I felt that way with Vibes at Corkin yesterday, where, I do think one of the few successes Dragon Gate's really had this year is the elevation of Gucci and Aki, but specifically Gucci. I mean, I've been such a fan of his for years now, and I thought after the Yamato match last year that they would not translate that directly into a big push, but I was ready for him to do something, and instead they actually took his gimmick away, which I understand that they probably needed to do, but then he was still just sitting around for the longest time. But, if I'm a Vibes fan, that's an entire unit that's in an opening match yesterday in a meaningless match against a bunch of guys that I don't care about, and they did nothing to set up anything on the Hokkaido leg. If I'm a fan that lives in Tokyo but watches every show, if I'm a Tokyo-based fan that's going to these shows, I don't know what Vibes is doing next month. Vibes has no, outside of Yamato, and I don't know if it's a direction that he's been given or if it's Yamato sensing that he needs to do something interesting, but the Yamato versus Gucci stuff and the Yamato versus Kimura stuff, I think both of those have been...
There's nothing there.
Yeah, and so, if they... Okay, so they're not revisiting Yamato versus Gucci on these shows. They're not setting up any Dragongate opponents. There's nothing for me to sink my teeth into, and I've got 2 June Corkin shows next month, and I don't have any idea what Vibes is going to do.
Yeah. Oh, Flamita's gonna come back for 3 months and probably be in some clusterfuck match at World, and then go back home.
At the very least, his hit rate has been so high since he came back a few years ago that I'd be okay with that, just because I thought so much of the Team Mexico, Team Japan stuff over-delivered last year for what could have been a throwaway, like, we'll put the Mexicans together. And then I thought those matches ended up being so good that I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I don't need it, but I understand why people would like it, so I won't. But yeah, I don't need. It's like, well, I don't need Bendito back. I'll put it at that. But yeah, you're totally right. And then
have you heard anything about the Panthers coming back? The Panther brothers?
No, I haven't.
Okay, because I thought they were a real shining star in Vegas this year again as well.
The only Flamita next month, and I know they've got the kid that passed the tryout is coming in once his paperwork is done. But beyond that, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Go ahead.
The Panther brothers, if I'm not mistaken, the Hong Kong Pro Wrestling Federation actually paid for the majority of their airfare last year. Like the North America to Asia leg was paid for by the Hong Kong group, and then either they paid themselves or Dragongate paid from Hong Kong to Japan, and Japan back to Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like, if that financial arrangement is not there, I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, we talked about it after Vegas. They might be the best guys that aren't working for a major league company regularly. They show up in DTU, and I think every once in a while IWRG. But as we talk, this is a conversation of a bygone era now, because I don't think most American wrestling fans see a young high flyer and think that, they should go to Dragongate now, which was obviously a prevalent thought for 15 or 20 years. But with the Panthers specifically,
You go to
those feel
EW.
like guys that you could build around and not transform them into the next Flamitas. But I think they're good enough to work on this roster full time.
Yeah, they probably get paid more where they are now. So that's
Yeah.
that's the other main difference between the bygone era is that, Dragon Gate money wasn't great money, but it was better than, you know, you could go home in between tours for the quarterly PWG show, but there wasn't any other work. But now there's plenty of work to go around. So it's not, and like this isn't it. Japan does not make sense financially right now if for anyone that has options. That's not a Dragon Gate specific, not a pro wrestling specific. Like it's a business specific. Like Japan does not make sense if you have options where you are right now from a financial perspective.
What's changed economic wise since you've been living there?
The yen has dropped by 70 cents on the dollar, and the cost of living has gone up by the same cost of living increases that you guys are feeling
Yes, very much
over
so.
there. I don't have a car, so I don't know about gas prices, but
They aren't good. As someone who
they're
has
not
one,
good.
not
Yeah,
good, not good.
I understand, but yeah, I have a gas stove. My gas bill, and even that, my gas bill wasn't very pleasing this month. But yeah, I mean that's the long and short of it. And entertainment has, I don't know. Wrestling hasn't recovered. Nobody's recovered. Nobody's doing well right now. So I
It
don't know,
does.
unless you're like
Oh,
Saya
go ahead.
Kamatani. That's that's it. That's the only person that it makes sense to continue being a wrestler right now is like her.
I was for years, as soon as Tanahashi announced that date, I was expecting the floor to kind of come out on January 5th, 2026. And I guess the thing that's kind of surprised me this year was, and of course, this kind of goes back to similar issues and other promotions, is creative. Like you had Aaron Wolf, who contributed no small amount in the a good amount to that dome number. And at least from everything that I had been told or like had experienced myself, it felt like that he had that pop culture purchase that 20 years ago would have been like off to the races, and that this is the guy that we're going to sell out buildings for like the next 3 or 4 years. And it just, the bump was only minuscule and then booked to oblivion, so it's not even existing. And it just does not seem like there's a possibility for an act to become a major pop culture kind of statement outside of Saya Kamatani and what she has been able to achieve, which for her and this entire ecosystem and everything is incredible. But it's just, it seems like it's kind of singular at this point and it's all on her.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, the days of someone with a legit background and coming in and becoming a pro wrestling star, you know, the early 2000s killed that anyway. Because it's just going to be, well, why isn't, he's a legit shooter. Why isn't he doing, Ryzen or I don't know, whatever. But and also, I don't want to body shame, but pro wrestling is an aesthetic business, and he gets a lot of criticism on that as well. I mean, the booking is another thing. I know that they're trying to make this like he's gonna get his revenge in at their next big show in Osaka. But whether he does or not, or whether the booking works, I don't know. But that's a different topic.
Let me ask, just to go off in a different direction here really quick, but we were talking about international guys. What did you hear feedback wise from the second go around in Las Vegas this year? Because Mike and I were there last year and had boots on the ground intel, but this year neither of us made the trip. And I think outside of the Dragon Gate specific stuff, we were both pretty checked out of WrestleMania weekend this year. But Jay, from the Dragongate perspective, what have you heard about Vegas year 2?
Nothing.
Okay, that's I
You
don't think it
know,
made a splash in North America. I think that weekend might be damaged beyond repair.
yeah, I mean, I think everything was overshadowed by like how all of the bad press and bad critical reception of WrestleMania itself. The only thing I heard was that they really like the kid that passed the tryout, like Saito and Susumu specifically, are really high on the kid. So they have they have some high hopes for him.
Is there any expectation? His name's Tristan Moody, I believe. He's actually
Tristan Moody,
from like
yes.
my old stopping grounds. Funny enough, is there any time frame, or has that even like become even a discussion of getting him over to Japan anytime soon?
Yeah, I know they're doing the paperwork, but paperwork takes
Oh,
time.
nice. Yeah.
But they do want to get him. It was a shoot. He went and did the tryout, and they liked him, so they're going to bring him over. It wasn't like okay, we're going to do a tryout, collect money from all these kids, and then we're going to put Ricochet in the tryout and say, "Wow, Ricochet, you're so impressive. We're going to bring you over to Japan." It wasn't
I haven't been watching YouTube
wow,
videos of you since you were a teenager. No. This is completely
yeah.
on
Wow,
the up and up.
wow. We had an open tryout, and a kid that can do a double moonsault showed up. What are the odds? Um, yeah, no, it was. I guess he showed up and was impressive, and so they're going to come and do something with him. Um, Marcus said he wants to come back, but it's difficult because he could get the call at any time. That's kind of like the catch with using bringing an a WWE ID guy over, is that he could be 3 weeks into a 3 months tour and booked for a title match, and they could call and say, "We need you on TV. We're bringing you up to NXT in 2 days, so get here," and you would have to go get there.
Yeah, that
But if they could,
was always the thing with him and the whole WWE ID thing. I remember the conversation that we've had years ago about not wanting to be other people's finishing schools. And even though I think that Marcus has
yeah,
done like great, and it was the thing that we've been critical about the creative. The thing that I like that they did immediately with him is said, hey, he seemed to encourage this tour so that he
yeah.
was not just kind of in the Monte drift zone the entire time. But the thing with
It's
like
funny you
if
say
you go ahead.
that because it's funny you say that because because they had a singles match in Cork and Hall, remember?
Oh yeah.
So they did a singles match because the Twin Gate match in Fukuoka was supposed to be Monte and Marcus, but then they switched it to Daya because Daya was wrapping up, so they wanted to beat Daya, or Daya wanted to put over Jackie Kami on the way out.
Hmm.
So
But
that actually would have been Marcus and Monte. So it's funny. It's funny you specifically said Monte.
but like having him like as a thing that always has a kill switch essentially that you don't get a control kind of runs contrary to that. But I guess that's just with the way that they've come in, and like those people have those deals and there's nothing you could really kind of do about it. You just have to adapt and use him for as much as you can, but you can't really. I don't know if
Yeah,
Marcus can ever win a title because of that contract, because of that kill switch proviso.
yeah, 100%. I mean, it's. I think that the vast majority of Dragon Gate fans that are coming to these shows have no idea what WWE ID is and what it means. So like it's not like that's something in the back of their mind where
Hmm.
they're thinking, well, he can't win because he's gonna get called away. So from that perspective, I think you can do whatever with him. You can give him title matches and you can do that sort of thing without the people that matter, knowing, thinking that he can't win because he's a WWE guy. it just turns into, wow, Jackie Reed's, wow, they beat a WWE ID, they beat a WWE guy, and they also not really understanding exactly what that means, but sounds cool if you say it out loud. But
and Dragongate knows that Monte is not on that same contract, right? That they actually could push him or put him in a unit or do something interesting with him. They are
I don't think
aware
they
of
know
that,
that.
right?
I don't think they're aware of that. No, I'll have to
Yeah,
bring
it
that up.
just, it seems
Um,
like maybe I don't know
I
what they're afraid of. I don't know what the plan is, but they could at any point decide to make a really great wrestler do something interesting, and it just seems like they're not interested in doing that.
I think that they prefer to have him as a utility man that can that they can plug in wherever. So if you have a situation where like a wrestler in a unit quits, then you can put Monte with those guys until
But
for
then
the
it's
next 8
maddening
months.
because he's not actually in the unit. So every time he pops up with Tanaka and Yuki, it's like, oh, okay, that match looks good on paper. Oh, I sure wish that he was in
Oh,
D-Curd so I could get behind the idea of this
yeah,
unit.
or him and Cielo teaming, on these teaming up recently. That like, oh, okay, that would be interesting, but it's not. It's not going to go anywhere.
Do you know why they didn't do Rey de Parejas this year, since we're talking about teams, and how I think this company, maybe more so than ever, desperately needed a tag team tournament in February, March, or April of this year, and they decided not to do one?
No place to do it because Fukuoka, um, because of the timing of Fukuoka. I think they're gonna. I don't. I actually I asked in February, so are we going to announce the tag league? I think and the response was like, well, we don't know. We haven't decided yet. So it might maybe after World
Oh no.
they'll move the tag league. I think after World they'll do the tag league because everything will be settled down and there will be new tag teams and enough teams to do a tag league. Because if they did it this year, or if they did it in March, it would have just been you'd
It would have
have
been like
Yoshioka and Ryoya.
the tag champions, basically.
Yeah, it basically would be Jackie and Rita losing all of their league matches,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then you would have had like they would have switched around the Gazudokuro team, so it would have been like Minora and Ishin and Hato and Jason, and it would have been none of them being able to, like them not being able to get along or
Which I
whatever.
think
So
maybe
that's
would have made
probably
the cage match build a little bit more interesting. It was an odd cage this year in that, and I guess this, I mean, I've been wanting to talk about Madoka Kikuta with you, and I think he plays into this where, the cage match build this year, I thought structurally was very sound. I understood what they were going for, but it never felt interesting to me. And Kikuta is one of these weird guys where, on paper, since he won the belt, I liked the Ben match and I liked the Susumu match, and the Gianni match was what it needed to be, I thought. And he and Yoshioka tried, but I think he and Yoshioka have negative chemistry with one another. And so, in theory, I've watched him have a number of pretty good title matches, but the longer this reign goes along, the more this has become one of my least favorite Dreamgate runs in history, because I think the in between the road to stuff, the build to all these title matches, I think Kikuta has been painfully uninteresting.
uh, I mean, the sum of the parts hasn't been good. If the challengers were interesting, he would be interesting. But because the challenge, you know, first fence was Benkei. Yes,
Yeah,
first
Ben
fence
and then
was Benkei,
Susumu.
and that was good. It made sense because Benkei was the next one on the list, right? Of the Reiwa New Generation guys. So like that was fine. But Susumu, yeah, Susumu's great. I don't want to trash talk Susumu because he's great and goes out and has a great match every time. But that's where you needed like throwing a 45-year-old in the middle of this, or throwing a veteran into this, just I don't think anyone believes Susumu was going to win as much as people. I feel like if you have a heel as a champion, need to people need to at least have a small shred of hope that the babyface is going to win, and they haven't produced challengers like that. And they threw the Yoshioka match up. Like, if it were me, that the second the 1, 2, 3 on Kikta pinning Shun, like everything I did, every action I made from that point on should have been building to Kikta versus Yoshioka, because that was the obvious biggest possible match that they could do.
Agreed.
But they didn't do it. They didn't do that. They didn't do that, and they just decided. Okay, well, Daya's leaving. We're changing plans. So let's burn off the Yoshioka match here with no build beyond it. And the fact that they had the KOG first round match where Yoshioka beat him like nothing.
Yeah, I thought they would double down on that in Fukuoka then. I mean, I was completely stunned by Kikuta retaining. I really couldn't believe that.
I was too.
And now, I don't know where you're at the beginning of May, but I've been telling Mike for months, I think they're going to go back to Kikuta Yoshioka at World. And maybe Minoura is the guy. But even then you're talking about, okay, so it's going to be Minoura turns face at the first June Korakuen. He
one of the two, yeah.
Yeah, but so then he rolls up Kikuta and Kobe, and they set up a dream gate. I mean, this is Kobe World. We're running out of time. We're 2 months away. It doesn't seem like Tanaka is the direction, and so I think they're just going to go back to Yoshioka.
I mean, I think that 6 weeks is enough. If it's Kikta Minoura, I think there's enough on it that if the betrayal, like if Minoura being betrayed is strong enough, I think there's enough meat on it, because Minoura's the last of the 6 that Kikta hasn't destroyed. Kikta ran him down in Korakuen yesterday, basically, not acknowledging him and saying, you weren't in this main event because you're not good enough to be in the main event. And I think that there's enough there to do for there to be a Kobe World main event. And to be honest, if it's not Minoura, who else is it? The only other option, you do Yoshioka again, and there's been no indication of that. And beyond that, who else?
The only other one, I mean, Mike, I don't know if anybody else comes to mind for you, but it would just be the Tanaka match, which again, it felt like if they were going to do that, it would be a little bit more obvious they were going to do that.
Yeah. And for me, I kind of had a fever dream realization case. When was this? This was like 2 weeks out from Golden Coliseum, when it was just like, oh my God, they're doing Minoura to me. Like I as much as the Yuki fan in me goes like, man, the company, at the very least, the company felt better to me a couple of years back when Yoshioka had the belt on his hands and over his shoulder versus Kikuta. Like there is like that guttural kind of reaction to it, but it just, I mean, especially with like the angle closing out the show with Minoli walking out and everything in the cage with Ishin in the lead up to it. I know that we are essentially, because World is the 23rd of July this year, is it?
That weekend.
20th. Oh, all right. My parents' anniversary. Okay. But we're still, fortunately, I mean, 8-9 weeks out, that I wonder like Minoura's merch is turned on and everything at a level that kind of leads me to believe that that's kind of the one route, because there's no one else that makes sense like it. there is the part of me that goes, maybe you should just give Hio a shot at this point, but I don't think you can do it at that. And even with him coming back from Best of Super Juniors at like 4-6, that's not going to be a situation that can lead to that kind of a main event for a first time title match.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at the roster, I mean, there's and you could do Cielo. I don't think it's going to be Cielo. Could be Cielo. Never know. Minora. I don't think they're going to do Yoshioka again. You could do Homare, but I don't think it's going to be Homare. Or you
But
do an old
the
guy,
issue with
and
the
it really
Minoru
should.
match, just real quick, like what's crazy is, okay, in theory, Coach Minoru is an established star, has been in or around being a top guy for a while now. But if you just look at this calendar year, he's had the ongoing thread with Ishin. It seems like it's been building to something like this. But what's the standout Minoru match? What's the standout moment? He's going to come into, we're just going to hope that
the babyface turn.
Yeah,
The
but
babyface turn was
then
moment.
we're 6 weeks away, and it's not like, I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe this is my Minoru bias creeping in. If he's selling a lot of merch right now, and there seems to be some sort of level of intrigue towards him, but I don't feel like the idea of Minoru versus Kakuta excites me more as like Champion Gate in Osaka Night 2 rather than Kobe World.
I mean, it's only 3 weeks less build than it was between BB Hulk's face turn and Kobe and him winning the Dreamgate, and Yamato's baby face turn and winning the Dreamgate. So it's not like it's a little shorter, but it's not that much shorter. And look, my honest opinion is I don't really care who it is, as long as there's just a babyface needs to win, is kind of where I'm at right now, because we're going on, I think the last time a major show ended with a babyface beating a heel was Monte beating Shun in Yokohama 2 years ago.
Yeah, probably. I mean, would you count any of the Yamato Dreamgate defenses?
I mean, strictly babyface versus heel big show.
Okay, yeah, because Ishin was a Korakuen.
Yeah, Yamato defended against. There was Keno, so Yamato, it was babyface versus outside guy, but it was a babyface versus heel. And then Yamato versus Daya. Yamato was actually the heel in that match. More people were behind Daya. Same for the Strong Machine J match, because of Strong Machine J's hometown. So I mean, we're going on 2 years of every single big show having having the heel standing tall at the end, and even Yamato winning the title, was over Benkei. So it's not like Yamato was the people's champion going, winning that match.
Yeah.
So
it's just crazy that I think you and I both have that realization of that thought, and then we're gonna put our faith in Coach Minoru, which I guess maybe it's a safer bet as a babyface than as a heel, but I don't know. Summer of 2022 still scars me.
And but I think we said the same thing going into that weekend, that as long as the weekend ended with Yoshioka walking out with the title, it would be fine. And the weekend was rough, but Yoshioka walked out with the title, and it was fine. It wasn't, it didn't change the world, it didn't kick off a boom period, but it was fine. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And I don't think Dragon Gate is unique in this right now. I think that we're in a very, if you look at who the major champions and other promotions are right now, that we're kind of it doesn't really matter who the champion is. It's more important to put the rest of the pieces in place.
Well, there's an epidemic of Western heel influence in Japan right now, where
it's always been here.
But I think it's far worse now. At the very least, I think the aesthetic has gotten uglier. I think the work has gotten worse. And one of the things in like the Voices of Wrestling bubble this year is a lot of people, myself included, have really latched on to Osaka Pro. One, I think because the shows look great and there's not a ton of it that makes tape and it's easy to follow. But two, they have Rogue Nation or Rogue Army or Rogue Nation, whatever their name is, which is a standard Japanese heel unit, but it doesn't feel like a watered down version of like a Nitro era TV in the same way that it does in All Japan and New Japan and Noah and Dragongate right now. I mean, I thought the main event yesterday, the Kame Rita Ishin Kato match, I thought it was the perfect glimpse into 2026 Dragongate, where you have these 4 young guys who, on an individual level, I'm invested in all of them. Kame's my favorite wrestler. Rita's not far behind. Ishin's not far behind him. And I'm really intrigued by Kato. I really like some of the steps that he's taking. And they're having this match, which 2026 Dragongate, for some reason, I have to give a shit about the All Asia tag titles now, even though I really don't. So main event, All Asia tag titles, okay, let's go along with the charade of pretending this matters. And they're having this great match. And then there's the spot where Kai trips the referee up. And I thought it was so telling that it didn't generate a ton of heat. It just kind of fell flat. And I was like, that is Dragongate in 2026 is a heel spot that nobody gives a shit about.
Yeah, that I will definitely side with you on that. I think that the spot that they do very poorly is the pulling the ref spot. I personally think that spot is the sole reason why Kikta versus Yoshioka sucked.
Yes.
I'm not saying it was a great match with. It would have been a great match without it, but it would have been a very good match.
I completely agree.
It was a match veering in one direction, and that ref rip kind of just tanked it at that point.
And then a week later, we came back with Ryoya and Jason, and they did a ref pull spot in that. And it didn't hurt that match at all because the babyfaces came back and won. I think the pulling the referee spot should only be used in 2 situations. If the heels are going to win, it needs to be a bullshit undercard tag match that's advancing a storyline. But if you're doing it in an important match, and you should never ever do it where the babyfaces hit their finisher and then the babyfaces are going to lose in a main event. Like, it's because it makes no sense. It's fucking stupid to do it in that situation. Like, it should always be, for a major match, it should always be the start of a turning point where it looks like the heels are going to win, but the babyface comes back and wins. But doing it like God, I rolled my head back and started packing my shit when they pulled the ref yesterday, because that match was fucking incredible until that moment. So I don't necessarily agree on the rest of the heel interference and all that, but the pulling of the ref spot is they don't know how to utilize it properly. And I'm very interested. When you're done with Michinoku, are you guys going to do a Osaka Pro rewatch?
I don't know.
We have not gotten to that point.
I'd be very interested to see how the current Rogue Nation compares to like Flux or Kishiwara Gundam, because I have a feeling it's the same, but I don't know.
I can't imagine you have, just because I sort of know your wrestling viewing habits at this point, but you're not watching modern day Osaka Pro, are you?
I'm not. I don't watch it. I don't watch wrestling in my free time.
That's what I assumed. It is.
All I know is they're giving OG Shiba a main event push,
which is fine. I'll see where it goes. But they have it's interesting watching Osaka Pro right now, where the production's really high. The building they primarily shoot out of looks really good on camera, and they have some young guys who just spiritually, you go, oh, how did they not wind up in Kobe? Like, oh, what's going on here? They have some young guys that I think are not good young Japanese indie wrestlers. I think they're legitimate prospects where maybe they'll never become this fully formed product just because of the irregularity in what Osaka Pro is, and they might not have other chances to work in bigger environments. But there's a young core there that is really exciting, and it's the most exciting Japanese indie thing that I think has happened post pandemic to see Osaka Pro get some of the momentum that they've got right now.
Interesting.
It's a good product, and it's an easy watch, and I find their heel stuff to be a little less overbearing than the legacy promotions at this point. It's there, but it's not all consuming. And the way, I mean, Noah will put a card out where I'm like, oh, there's a few matches there that look good on paper, and then I go, oh, that's right, so and so's in Team 2000X now. I'm not even going to bother with this because I know how this match is going to go, and I really don't want any part of it.
Yeah, I don't. This is one of the reasons why Psypatra didn't work, because I think that the idea of having two heel units in a promotion is something that, for lack of a better term, is something that is only appeals to the marks. Like,
Yeah.
it's only one of the, if whenever it comes up, it starts with a, we need to have a discussion about why it would be okay to have two heel units. Like, it doesn't it doesn't work, and it's one of the reasons why the cage match was flat this year, was because you're not sure who were you supposed to cheer for in that.
I think it was
Like,
supposed to be Hamare, but I wasn't. The point I made about the cage match to somebody, I was talking to somebody about Dragongate that doesn't keep up with the promotion a ton now, and I was like, the thing with the cage match this year is logically, like, it was there. I saw what they were going for, but unless you're invested in the future of Hamare, which I am, I love the guy. But it was like, all right, this checks all the boxes of what a cage match should be, but there's no deeper level of emotion that I have with it.
yeah, but the analogy would be the year they did the All Berserk one. I was like, but that was all heels, but there was the expectation that there was somebody that fans were ready to get behind and ready to cheer was going to turn babyface, whether it was
Yes.
Yamato or Doi. Somebody was going to turn, and there was going to be a happy ending, and there was going to be some sort of catharsis at the end. And people want to cheer for Homar, but it wasn't a babyface turn. Like, he's still a prick today. So I don't think that, like, if you were, someone that was just coming in because it was a big show and there was a cage match, I don't like, you should at least be able to look at the people in the match and say,
Mhm.
oh, okay, that's the good guy. That's the guy I should be cheering for. Even though I don't know these six guys, but that's probably the guy I should be cheering for. And that's why the guys with Okuro, Psypatra, and Psypatra in general didn't work, because they Shun was unwilling to change. And like, Gianni said this to me, actually, because he came in and joined Psypatra, and it was like really cool. Like, his siding with Psypatra
It was
was really
awesome.
cool.
It was fantastic.
It was awesome. It was awesome. And the idea that he comes in and he's siding with them, but he hasn't changed a bit, in theory, is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's very confusing. It's very confusing too. Like, if you go to like, it's one thing if you're watching every single network show and you're tuned in and you understand, but if they go to a small show in Fukui, and Gianni comes out to the Z-Brats music and he's swinging his chain, and Shun is still being a prick and being a heel, it's just like there's a disconnect from it. and it takes away from the basic level of it. Pro wrestling needs to be easy to understand for first timers and kids and people that
Yeah.
may be watching for the first time. And it's also like Gianni was he said on the KOG finals, he was like, well, I don't, they, if they want me to be babyface, I can be babyface, but they haven't told me what to do. And he was like, if I should go out and be a babyface, I can go out and be a babyface. If they want me to go out and still be a heel, I can be a heel. But not not knowing what to do, not understanding makes it very difficult. Not just for the fans to understand, but for him to understand what to, what to go out and do. And I do understand the perspective of, well, the biggest stars last year, there's obviously there's not, there was Naito, but last year Ozawa, Kamitani were both, the biggest stars in their companies, and they were both heels. But like, they weren't middle ground heels. Like, they weren't shades of gray heels. They were in heel units. They were in, like you just said, Team 2000X, who are dog shit heels on the rest of the card. Just people like Ozawa. People got behind Ozawa because Kiyomiya was such a geek, and it turned into a thing. And Kamitani hates is a heel unit that does heel unit things. She got on TV and became a big star and is an incredible wrestler. So she just happened to become the big star while being a heel. It wasn't your top star needs to be a cool heel now. But that's what they tried. That's what they tried to do with Saipatra, or it's what Shun wanted to do with Saipatra, and I don't think the fans understood it. I don't
No,
think
and I don't know
Yeah.
if this falls into the category of it's not going to work for me, brother, that you were referencing earlier. But after Shun lost to Kakuta, I made the point to Mike. I go, this is where if there was ever a time to have unbridled babyface Shun Skywalker, where he's trying to make amends with the people that he's wronged, and he becomes Mr. Dragongate, this is the time to do it. And I think that foil would have worked great against Gaja Dokuro, but to have Shun Hamare, Cielo, Gianni, I became the biggest Gianni supporter there was. I thought the work that he was doing was brilliant. To have that unit lined up on paper the way that it was, and to not have it work is a major indictment on, I don't know if it's Shun or the booking or whatever it is, but that unit should not have failed the way that it did.
Yeah, it failed pretty hard, and extenuating circumstances all around on that. But I can't personally say from a fan perspective I was into anything Shun did last year. I don't remember the last time. I know we talked around World,
Yeah.
but
That was probably it.
Yeah, I hated the "if I lose, I quit" angle.
Yes, that was the big crux of the last time we had you on. Was I was so into the Shun stuff, because the big angle right before that would have been like the Rey de Parejas run, which I mean was mostly Hamare focused, but I thought that was the greatest thing, and I was so into the idea of Yamato versus Shun until that.
And then faking the injury in Kobe, doing a worked injury so he could show up at a New Japan show, but then he got injured for real. But maybe he didn't get injured for real, and maybe it was work. Maybe it was a work, or whatever. And then not letting it. Turning on him immediately was, it was fine. It was a shocking ending. It was fine, and I think the show was great in the few weeks in between him winning the title and the title match with Kikuta. There was like the show in Kobe where Shun was either injured or he was overseas, so they had to do Homare and Kikuta in a singles match, and then Shun showed up out of nowhere and cost Kikuta the match, and he gave like this kind of, it was a typical Shun promo, but it was kind of a babyface promo while standing in the crowd and standing on the chairs. Like, I thought that was awesome, and I thought that was where they were going to go. But then he just lost to Kikta and no sold it and stayed heel, and now it's May 9th. It's
Yeah.
essentially the long
Yes.
and short of it.
And it really goes to one direction because it's so clear how traditionally things could have gone with it, and instead doing the two heel units, it feels like, at least with now that Cy Patrick's in our review, that there was a disconnect with like wanting to have a very intricate like heel versus heel and like shades of gray kind of thing. And like as you were saying, Jay, like the fan base, maybe if this was a promotion where like day to day, like it was like one show a week and it was up like on TV and everyone was able to really be up on it, and it wasn't just, you know, a wide age range of kids from like 4 to adults with it, maybe it could have been seen as kind of successful. But it just, I really think that the blame goes in one direction, and it's someone that I know that for Case, it's like the first time in his career that we kind of have to question his sensibilities in a lot of ways. I think it lays with Shun, and it's a pretty big anchor on him.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I don't like that Shun Skywalker's doing stuff that I'm not interested in, but that's where we are. You know, Jay, as we try to always leave no stone unturned when you're on with us, we have not really talked about Ryoya Tanaka yet. It was announced this morning that he's going to defend the Brave Gate belt against Doi in June, which I think is outstanding. I can't wait for that. This deep into the Tanaka Brave Gate run, are you still invested in this title reign, or were you invested to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy.
I agree.
Um, I actually think that I think I think it's incredible how much he's succeeded in spite of their efforts to have the reign. Like, like Horiguchi was the wrong opponent, and UT was the right opponent if he was healthy. But as soon as I understand that they made the match and sold the sponsors before his neck went bad, but I don't know. I feel like they should have changed that match. But yeah, the Doi match is very exciting. I think it's very intriguing. Dragon Kid is the obvious for the record break at World, but Hyo is also very compelling. Coming back coming back at 2-8 from the Super Juniors, like you said, like Daya, but like Daya did. Daya got
No,
kicked off his
Daya
boost.
versus Yo was a hot match.
And it was, yeah, that was the hottest Brave Gate match post shit, man, post in a long time until
Yeah.
Ryoya won it. And yeah, and so Dragon Kid would be fine too, and then you can maybe do Hyo after the record break is in the rear view. You can go to Hyo for after that, but yeah, no, Ryoya is the guy. I think they need to give him a unit. I think that we don't need to have D-Courage anymore. That they don't need to do a big angle. They just need to, amicably agree to go their separate ways. Unfortunately, I think that means Yoshioka ends up teaming with Minoura, but
Ooh.
that's fine. It's the start of a new unit. It's fine. And I think you need to give Ryoya a unit, make him a leader. He can talk, he can wrestle, he looks good.
Is there anybody on the
like,
roster that you would want to see him paired up with in a unit?
Oh, it's a good question. I again, let's see. I think
I
the
like to see
inclination would
Kimura with
be,
him.
yeah, I think making a like millennials type unit with him, like Ryoya, Homare, Kazuma. I would be hesitant to put Cielo with them, but I could see them putting Cielo with them. Something in that direction.
Cielo is such an interesting piece to figure out.
Yeah, I don't know where Cielo goes because I feel like Cielo and Yoshiki as a team is is the play.
Oh yeah,
But
I mean playing
if
off of the class thing eventually.
if it's hard to do though. Shimizu being out hurt, not just ruining plans that were already in place, but it makes it hard to do anything else with Gazudokuro now because if Minoru is leaving, that puts them down. Let's see, who do they have? So Shimizu's out, so it would be Kikuta, Lee, Kai, Ishin, Yoshiki. So if you took Yoshiki out and put him with Cielo, you'd have 1, 2, 3. You'd have 4. You probably have to put Fuda with them as the job guy. Yeah, I mean you can make it work because I guess
Do
that's the
people
hard
care
thing.
about Cielo? I can't tell if he's over or not.
Super over, super over.
Okay, that's good. That's what I want. I like him, but I have a really hard time contextualizing him. Like if you were going to rank out the roster of, main eventers, upper mid carders, I just have a hard time figuring out where he's slotted right now.
Well, I mean, he's only been wrestling for 8 months, so it's not like
Exactly. Yeah.
it's not. He's. It's going to be interesting to see what he has because him and Homare, were in the Shin Vortex for Cielo's entire run was in the Shin Vortex where all the matches were filled with a bunch of bullshit. So all he had to do was hit his spots and duck out of the way. So for both of them, him and Homare, it's going to be really interesting to see because I think Aki is ahead of Homare right now.
I,
I don't necessarily think it's going to stay that way, but
mm-hmm.
Aki has had the nurturing environment that
I,
Homare didn't have.
I have to say how Aki, since he's graduated, right? Like he got his degree and is now full time every show at this
Yes.
point. It's noticeable now that he is on every show because I feel like especially last 6 weeks I wasn't super into his Natural Vibes debut, and frankly in comparison to Gucci he felt like that he was a step behind. But man, since I guess since graduation and since he's been on every tour, I feel like and it really came off in the Kids Day match that he really has taken that step forward, like maybe multiple steps in a period of a month, it feels like.
Yeah, his neck and his I think his neck is healed finally too, so he's been able to just go and be a cannonball. Yeah, I like Aki a lot. I like Kazma. I like Kazma a lot. I like Aki a lot.
I am ready for them to do
Actually,
something with Kazma. I am in love with that kid.
he's not there yet. He's still kind of awkward in places, but I think if you get him into something consistent,
Mm-hmm.
then he's gonna show out really quick. Honestly, as good as Gyuchi and Aki in Vibes has been, this is where I kinda wish that Vibes broke up
Yeah.
because um giving these two the same opportunity while also maybe giving space for that to put see because it would be really interesting to have had like one like out of some combination of Strong Machine J, Yoshioka, and Minora, some two out of those three with Gyuchi, Aki, and one other, whoever, Kimura, let's just say for the sake of argument, Kimura in that spot, because right now it's difficult to make 2 units. Because I think they need to make 2 new units, but it's difficult to do that from a numbers perspective. So I keep coming out to 4
Mm-hmm.
because let's say I'm just randomly, but assuming Decourage splits in half and Yoshioka and Ryoya each make a unit. So Ryoya, Homare, Kazuma, Cielo. So that's 4. And then you'd have Yoshioka, Minora. Yeah, I mean, this is where Monte would fit in, right?
Yeah, you
And
would
then
think.
Yeah.
Monte and Fuda. So that's 4 people's unit. And I don't know.
Well, what do you do with
I don't
Shun?
know. What do you do with Shun? That's a really
Yeah. I kind of feel like it's the best thing. Like if we're talking about just redrafting and getting people into the units, the longer that Shun can be away and not be a part of it, I think kind of neat it would be the better with this. Like if Shun is taking serious time and we don't see Shun for a couple of months and he misses this shakeup and he still is like a independent doing his kind of thing, I feel like that's less disruptive to the other two units than trying to wedge him in with his general just deal right now, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with Shun. Like he's got a bunch of stuff going on. His ankle is bad. His ankle's bad. His knees are bad. His knee is bad. His neck is bad. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't. Well, he's got a hometown show on June 14th. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see or hear anything about Shun until that show.
I
'Cause
worry
we know
when
not
he's
going to.
eventually back that they're going to have him do like a lone wolf thing for a while, and I think that'll be death. I don't need opening match Shun just kind of hanging out doing nothing by himself. I think if he's going to be around, he's got to be in a unit. I think we learned that with he and Ben in 2019, where they were off on an island. I don't think it did either of them any favors. If you're gonna be around, you need to be in a unit. There's just a certain flow to this promotion that relies on those things. But I'm really worried that he's just going to be a solo artist for a little bit. I think that'll be death.
I just wonder. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
I was just gonna say, like, if he was gonna go, I think this would be the perfect time. Like, if he just left and never came back, I think that was the correct send off.
I'm constantly terrified of it. I feel like he's.
Well, I mean,
I don't know. He reminds me a little bit of Shingo at the end, where he's still good, but you go, what else do you do with this guy?
Well, I mean, it's 2026. It's been 10 years since the top heel has gotten their comeuppance. Shingo, peacefully parted from the heel unit, quit the company. Eita got kicked out of the heel unit, stayed a heel, left the company. It would be on pattern if it were to happen with Shun. But
I
again,
know.
like I said, he's got a hometown show in June, so that is still the prominent banner on the homepage. Unlike Diaz that they deleted from existence. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, it would be on. I don't know what a send off for Shun would even look like anyway, and I don't even know, like, if Shun were to go to New Japan, I don't even know, like, it wouldn't work. I don't feel like it would work because they don't do that. Like, they don't have people like Shun.
No, I think he'd have to be Masquerade Shun, which I think if he was just that, if he was just a lanky baby face, I think he'd crush. But that feels
But they
like
have
it was.
Takeshita already. They don't.
Yeah, exactly. And I that also, I don't know if Shun. I mean, look, I would love to hit the Men in Black memory eraser and have Shun come out in June. And if it's a babyface team with Monte, just have him just be a normal wrestler for a little bit. But I don't know if he's capable of going back to that.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to do that.
I know, and it's a little concerning because I felt during the Kakuta match last August, and I had a full blown crisis on this podcast. I felt like it was the first time, because even throughout the injury and the fake injury and the build the world and whatever it was, it's still, by the end of the day, we got Yamato versus Shun in a pretty spectacular match, and I left World going like, yep, Shun's the man. He's still, for my money, the best wrestler in the world, not named Will Ospreay and not named Healthy Bryan Danielson. Like, he's still got it. And then August came around, and I kind of thought Shun bombed in that Kakuta match. And I went, oh no, he might have flown too close to the sun with his character work, and this might be it for him. And I don't really think he's been the same since then.
Yeah, and this is purely my own. This is just my own reading of the take. I don't know. I don't know if what I'm about to say is accurate or not. This is purely my own delusion, but I feel like Takeshita winning the G1 may have set off a crisis for him, because if you remember when he was coming up and was starting to make a lot of buzz, it was the same time Takeshita was starting to gain exposure outside of DDT, and Shun would always say the opponent that I want to have a match with Takeshita, because they were very similar. That they were kind of the young top guy that was emerging from the Japanese indie, similar size, similar style, and then Takeshita won the G1, and even though New Japan fans didn't accept it, it still, maybe in Shun's mind, put Takeshita out of reach. Like that, the kayfabe story that they did with Shun and Benkei may have happened to Shun in real life with him and Takeshita, in that Takeshita got too far ahead, and that may have sparked a crisis in Shun.
That's deeply concerning to think about. As a Shun Skywalker fan, that is not what I want to hear. I want to hear that man is grounded and committed to Dragongate.
Again, I don't. That's just purely 100% my own thinking, my own read on the situation. But I don't know. I mean, if he wants, I don't see what, if he wanted to go to New Japan, I don't, again, like I said, I don't know what they would do with him. Like, because they're not going to push a Masked Man to IWGP. It's also not it's not in New Japan's interest to take another guy from an outside promotion and give them a massive push over one of their own guys. So, like,
especially after what happened with Takeshita.
Yeah, 100%. Like, Takeshita bombing as G1 and IWGP champion should have been the sign to Shun that he was probably better off where he is. But it may, I don't know. He may take some time off and come back in. But if he were to go, I think this is the time to do it.
I've always thought that Noah would be the landing spot if he was going to leave. Shun Skywalker, GHC heavyweight champion, does not seem out of the realm of possibility to me.
Yeah, but then Noah. No.
There's not a promotion that annoys me more than Noah. I would hate to see it, but
Shun is one of those guys that, like, it's one thing for someone like Ishida or Eita to leave and be content with Noah, but someone like Shun would not be just from a, caring about his own career, his own results, and his own character, he's not someone that would tolerate a lateral, a back into the left move to Noah. Whereas, well, again, I don't know. I wouldn't.
Him winning the GHC heavyweight title would get him on the cover of a magazine, and I know that's not happening if he wins a Dreamgate belt. And I don't know if something like that matters to him, but that's always been my line of thinking there.
Well, no, because he would win. He would win the GHC title, and then like something would happen in like
Stardom would have
wouldn't be
an angle.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Cyber Agents or Cyber Fights week for a cover. So so they would have like Maki Ito and Kikyo on the cover or something.
It would be Wolf time
instead. Yeah.
Jay, I think go ahead.
No, I was just gonna. The cover would be the next person that left Marigold or something like that.
I think there are two things we want to hit on real quick before we let you go. One, I feel like it was maybe a bigger topic last year. Maybe some of the dust has settled on this, but we appreciate your insight on the Japanese venue roundup. Is there anything else going away that we should be aware of? Are there any towns or markets in Dragongate where, hey, maybe the Korka numbers are what they are, which don't seem enthusiastic even for 2026 standards, but are there any tiny towns where you feel like there's movement or momentum or a pretty hot Dragongate fan base right now?
I mean, not really, but I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a bad way.
Yeah.
I like everything. In the crowd for Nagoya was a good sign that even in a different building with really shitty access on a different time during Golden Week, that they were able to still do a big crowd was good. Kobe Arts Center going away is, a bad thing in general. Losing a venue is bad in general, but I think losing Kobe Arts Center from a visual aspect on TV is probably a good thing.
Yes.
Obviously, Shinjuku Face doesn't really matter much to Dragongate, but losing Shinjuku Face is a big deal for wrestling in general, and hopefully that's not a canary in the coal mine sort of situation.
And they have one last Shinjuku Face show before it closes up in July, right?
Yes, in July. It's just going to be like some kind of like all-star farewell show. I don't know. I don't know what.
Nostalgia Gate kind of thing.
Probably not even that. Probably like a Doi Darts. Not Doi Darts, but like that sort of.
Don't speak that into the universe if it's not happening.
Yeah. There is, though, so in terms of replacement for Shinjuku Face, there is Marigold did a show in the Sumidaku something or other in Kinshicho. It's like a 12-minute walk from where I live, and apparently it's an upgrade in every way from Shinjuku Face. The rent is cheaper. The dressing rooms are bigger. There's much more space to work with for setting up merch tables and things like that. The only catch is you have to bring your own ring, which you didn't have to do for Shinjuku Face. But that is actually kind of a big deal for a lot of promotions that don't own their own ring. But that might be another venue for companies to use, at least until like they tear down and rebuild the building that Face is in, and Face can reopen. In terms of, Edion is closed until next year. I'm actually surprised they're going to do Stella Hall for Osaka shows. I'm actually surprised they're bothering to do that at all. I thought they would just do more. They would shift Kyoto and Sambo dates around. because after like the Champion Gate weekend in March, after that there was Eddie on number 2. There's only 2 or 3 shows on the calendar after that. So I thought they wouldn't bother and they would just shift around other Kansai shows, but they're going to do Stella Hall for that until Eddie on number 2 opens back up.
Are they going to
And
tape
then,
from Stella Hall?
yeah, it's live
Okay.
from Stella Hall.
All right.
What else? And then obviously Edion will be renovated, so it will be good for 10 years. Nagoya Congress Center will reopen in January or April, and that'll have been renovated, so it'll be good for 10 years. I don't know about Aichiken Budokan. It was a good crowd. It's a nice building. Like it holds a lot of people, but it's small, so it was really good for atmosphere. So I wouldn't be surprised if they run it again. I know there's like a 7,000 seat venue opening up in Nagoya next year, but I have a feeling that it's not going to be good for pro wrestling. What else? No Yokohama this year because I guess they wanted it for November 3rd, but they couldn't get it for November 3rd. So they just punted on Yokohama this year, but it is going to be back on schedule next year. Fukuoka is February every year going forward. And at least next year and the following year, the January Korakuen will be on Sunday, but it will be evening, not morning.
Oh, that'll be an interesting vibe.
Yeah, I know the morning show was well received, but it's too hard. You know, it's logistically, it's just very Sunday morning is too hard, and honestly from a financial standpoint, it's better to do a weekday evening show or a Sunday evening show and do a few hundred less people because you have more time to sell merch. And look, the thing is, it's like, why don't they do more weekend shows, or why don't they do Sunday for every Korakuen? It's just from the Dragongate touring system, the weekends are for the towns that it only makes sense to do on weekends,
Right.
So like you can run a Korakuen Hall show on Sunday and do 1,500 people as opposed to 1,100 people. But that may mean you don't get to go to, I don't know, let me pick a venue. That you don't.
You're not going to make
to
everywhere
go
in
to-
Iwate.
Yeah, you can't go to Okayama. You can't go to, Kurashiki in Okayama for 300 people, where it's the only pro wrestling that comes to their town. That I think it makes more sense to leave. And from a logistics standpoint, God, like they would basically have to have, like, the Saturday before would have to be a Kanto show
Because they would
like,
have
if
to be there at like 8 a.m. on Sunday, right?
and the Gaoru people have to be there at 8 a.m. on Sunday, which means they're either leaving Osaka, at 4 a.m, or they're staying in a hotel on Saturday night, which is an added cost because you've got the entire Gaoru staff staying in a hotel room. So that's the January will be Sunday evenings, but that's why it was a first time and last time thing this year, because it just doesn't make sense.
Was there also, given the fact that it's like a Sunday afternoon, I know that there has been ticket plans that have started up, like that there's a way that, like on some shows, that it's like, I don't know the exact cost of, but it's basically 2 adults and 2 kids for like an X amount. Was it also a situation where, because you are going into that time frame and you'll naturally have that sort of audience, that they had to adjust price wise for that as well, so they were not even making as much off the top because of the time change?
The family plan is only for house shows, so anything on TV doesn't have. I think some Sambo shows might have it but like Korakuen and Big Shows don't have the family plans.
Well, I think that we have gotten to a point, Jay, where we
You
were
got to ask
trying
me
to
about
hold
Magnum
off.
Tokyo, right?
Gotta ask about Magnum Tokyo.
We have to talk about the most self-aggrandizing person in pro wrestling who might be
Yamato?
who might make a good point, but is the way that he makes his points and getting to the points has not been fun whatsoever. So yeah, Magnum Tokyo after 19 years is back in the fold after the talk show and the threaded lawsuit.
I don't know where to start on this, so tell me where I should start.
So
Do we need to go back?
Yeah. Let's go back and let's talk about his departure and how things are, because we were able to talk about it from essentially stories and reporting that has been made of the time that had that. So because the Dragongate was kind of your reporting, let's talk about what led Magnum to get out of the promotion and the years in wilderness, and then 2026 being the weirdest year in Dragon System history.
Okay, so what is the story as it is understood now about how and why Magnum left?
So my understanding, in case jump in, Magnum was one of the people who were heavily involved behind the scenes in the switch between Toryumon and Dragongate, and had a level of heightened responsibility into the room. And then he had his injuries in 2006 with his eye, but and the Renaissance thing. But in 2007 was fired slash forced retirement, and the story that came out was embezzling transit funds when they found out, and they forced him out of the company because of that.
Okay. Let me backtrack a little bit, because that's actually also the reason why they split away from
Right.
Ultimo, was because Ultimo,
He had all the money and the kids didn't.
yeah, he went to WWE, divested himself of like, he was completely separated from Toryumon Japan, like past, like he was off the books in Toryumon Japan, but was still drawing like a 6-figure salary while making WWE money. So that was the that that was that. So we have to, all of the major shakeups in Toryumon Dragon Gate history have essentially revolved around somebody was taking a lot of money and other people were unhappy about it. So just to set the tone for the story. So for Magnum, yeah, essentially what you said is the 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 story of what happened. Because Magnum was gone after that. He went to Hustle for a few years, but then that was it. He ran his karate dojo and was completely out of pro wrestling. So the story goes. Apparently, this is all a shoot. Like the legitimate story is Handsome Jiro. Was his Jiro's dad was one of Magnum's sponsors in the Hustle days, and Jiro was going to be Handsome Jiro was was going to be a trainee for Hustle, but it was around the time Hustle was going under, so he ended up becoming Smash
World
trainee
One.
for
Oh yeah. He was
for,
Smash. I forgot about
for,
Smash.
for Tajiri. He ended up being, or yeah, Tajiri's young boy, or one of Tajiri's trainees. So, but I guess Handsome Jiro's dad was a big sponsor or associate friend, confidant for Magnum. So when Jiro did his anniversary show last year, he called and asked Magnum if he would come, and not thinking he would, but Magnum agreed, and agreed to come and just do what he did, do the appearance in the ring, and nobody else knew about it. And he and Shima had not talked since Magnum left. Like legitimately, like Magnum leaving Dragongate was the last time he talked to anybody in Dragongate. Is apparently what happened. So she, what she said in talk show that like he got there, he saw Magnum Tokyo on the dressing room, and he was like, so who's is that like Sakura Hirota or somebody going to doing a parody? And so they were like, no, it's the real person. He's up, he's out around the ring, and like Shima went and they saw him and they hugged, and that was the reunion, and they went drinking, they reconnected, and they got super drunk and called Milano on the phone and sang happy birthday, and they had a big thing, and that's how Magnum got back into the public eye. But it was also the first time that he told his side of the story. So the story at this point, as we understand it, is the Dragon Gate side of the story. So Magnum's side of the story, which we have to understand and acknowledge that the truth is probably somewhere in between these two truths, right?
Sure.
So Magnum's side of the story is, was he embezzling money? Yes, he was, but he was doing it on order. He had been given an order to. I don't know the exact scheme and how he was doing it. From what I understand it, he was responsible for invoicing like tour buses and expenses, and he
Mhm.
would file like false invoices and pocket, and they would skim off those invoices. So I guess he wasn't skimming; he was skimming for Okamura. That it was Okamura's orders, go and do this and bring money to me. And so he did that, but was, taking his own chunk off of that. And I don't know, like if you're somebody that, if you own the company and you're splitting money and you decide you want more money, then what are you going to do? You're going to get rid of the guy that's taking his own share. So Magnum's story is that the percentage he was taking was no longer acceptable, and he was set up by Okamura to take the fall for all of it, to take responsibility. And they made him go out in front of the locker room and basically say, I stole everything, and they made him sign, they a bunch of other things. They basically set him up to they to set up so the locker room would think that he was acting alone, and then that was it. And that, as far as everybody else, including Shima, thought that was the truth. That was the reality of the situation, and that he got fired for all of it. So this is Magnum's side of the story. Again,
Sure.
the truth is probably somewhere in between. And then where it becomes ironic is that that's also why Okamura and Shima got kicked out, was because they were doing the same thing. Well, and then Shima told his side of the story recently too, where like he was in Tijuana and they called him back and they confronted him they went to a diner and had like 6 wrestlers confront him or something like that.
Right. Yeah, and then a younger
Um,
wrestler said, "If you're not going to be with us, then you're our enemy." And
yeah,
then
that's
they filed against Okamura the next day.
yeah. Which again, truth is probably somewhere in between on that. But anyway, so they reconnected. They did a talk show, and um, it's funny because um,
It didn't make like
Shima,
immediate news for a while, that talk show.
well, yeah, because it was private. It was a no
It
social
was a
media
fan
event.
club
It was
thing, yeah.
it was not even. It was just like an independent event held by them. It was supposed to be the kickoff because Shima is retiring probably next year sometime. I don't know when, but I know that this freelance run is. I mean,
It's the
the stuff with Glate, like they double crossed him really bad, I guess. Like all of that is supposedly like everything that happened with him in Korakuen Hall and Lindemann, like when he freaked out
Yeah, that was a
in the
shoot.
ring. That was all a shoot. Like they double
Yeah.
crossed him. But yeah, like the story goes is that he's winding down. Whether it's exactly 1 year or the rest of this year, all of next year, or whatever it is, but he's going to retire soon, and he does want to come back
Right.
to do a match, 1 or 2 matches. Not come back, but he does want to, come and say goodbye, essentially. And I think that before the talk show, it probably would have happened because I think there's enough. There were a lot of reunions last year. There's a lot of sentimental type things last
Right.
year, like
Yeah.
like Susumu went to Secret Base and met Mototsugu Shimizu for the first time in a while, and like Hanaoka came in and did it. There were a lot of like those types of things, and I think the old guys now, guys like Horiguchi, Fuji, like that generation of wrestlers, I think that they're starting to think about legacy closure and also giving back, because Shima was Shima made Horiguchi. Without that El Numero Uno, Horiguchi doesn't become what he becomes. So I think the ice had melted enough to where they probably could have made it happen. But then this talk show happened, and Magnum went ballistic, and the main crux of where the lawsuit from the threats of a lawsuit from Dragongate side came by, Magnum made reference and alleged about some assault stuff.
Yeah. And then also saying literal Epstein files. I caught that part of it too, but it seemed like it was
again, this is just what Magnum said in the talk show, is that
Mhm.
he got there was again, this is just what Magnum said, that there was a sales guy named Namba who passed away, and apparently he was you know the stuff with the stuff we just talked about with Magnum, and the Cora stuff happened not too long after that. I think it's pretty obvious that the powers that be at that time,
Mhm.
it was a pretty depraved environment at that time. And I guess this guy was keeping notes, but he passed away. But I guess Magnum got to see these notes, and that's what he was referring to as Epstein files. But again, this is all stuff, it's almost 20 years old stuff at this point. Like it's one of those, like if it came out, it would be very damaging, but at the same time, it's not the current administration
Right. This
stuff.
is all Okamura era stuff.
But with the idea, though, that there are still people in power right now that are still here now, and it was mainly the assault allegations, which were again, 20 years old, but still not good. So that's where the lawsuit threat came from. But they settled. Magnum. I know Magnum was Magnum allegedly he had receipts for all of this stuff. I don't know what kind of receipts or what he
Mhm.
had, but apparently he was serious about it. But they made peace. He and Keto took the pick, made peace, and then made peace with Saito, and Yamato went and apologized for being a meme lord on the Twitter machine. But what does it mean in the long term? Probably nothing, to be honest with you, because I know, like, open door policy, right? That means it means
Mhm.
everybody can come back, but Everybody left because for reasons, and um, I don't think that I don't. If it were me, if this were my company, and this is my history, I think the only thing that from the company side that they can do is that if they are serious about it, is everybody has to buy in and everybody has to be sincere about it.
Mhm.
And I think it would be very hard. I think it would be very hard to get full buy-in on this. Um, you know, and because even if the veteran, all the old guys are like, "Oh, yeah, we're fine with it. Let's bring Shima back for a match, or let's bring Linda Man back. Let's bring the Linda Man back in full time." The young guys here, they don't know Shima. They don't know Magnum. Most of the young guys here don't even know Linda Man or T Hawk, and it would be damaging to morale to have. I think could potentially be seen as more cronyism for the old guys. That, oh well, they're bringing back one of their old pals, and they're gonna give them a spot when Ryu Fuda can't get on a Cork and Hall show. So I think that expectations should be low. I'm not. I want to believe it at face value, and I think we should all take it at face value, but while at the same time understanding that it's probably not going to lead to anything immediately. Is Shima going to get a match? Yeah, I think he is. Um, does it need to be more than that? No, I don't think it is. Are SB and Takuma going to come back? Probably not, because they just got their US visa. But yeah, and they have AAA contracts. I don't know what AAA contracts mean in the context of 2026, but yeah, I wouldn't
It,
have many expectations about this.
yeah, I guess like really other than like the aspect that the Dia aspect that's kind of interlinked a little bit into this where Magnum clearly was I mean he was alluding to younger talent but there was a possible dotted line to connect with it. It just seems that what value is there for a Magnum Tokyo to be around other than it heals per at least at
And
this point one of the biggest fissures in the company's history, and that like there is
and
like the idea of okay maybe if you want to look at it as like an optics one, it's an optics one with it, but I just don't know after what all went down with the talk show and then how public it all necessarily was, other than the fact that it is nice to be able to say like there's part of the history that perhaps long term we're not going to have Shima and Magnum Tokyo, Chris Benoit out of footage. Like that's a positive, but I just for all
I
to
don't.
go through all of it, I just don't know how much is it really worth having him back around for it. And then other than like
I,
the overall nice idea of Shima getting his retirement match and his home promotion and healing that wound, like I don't
I don't
know
think you
long
can
term.
undersell how big that is, though.
Oh no, that is
Because
true.
there are a lot of fans that you can. I think 80 to 90% of the hardcore anti Dragongate like types, like on social
Mm-hmm.
media and otherwise, they're all people that turned because Shima left. So, like, Shima coming back and making peace would shut them all up. I'm not saying it would bring them back, but
Mm-hmm.
it would take away the people that shit post and respond to every result, and that this isn't the same heart-stopping promotion that it was when Shima was here. It's second rate, because they wouldn't be able to say that anymore, because if Shima came back, shook hands, he doesn't need to. Like, I would do a containment match. Like, I would do a Korakuen Hall match with him and Don Fuji against Mochizuki Senior, Mochizuki Junior, and then I would just do then the Big Show match, like Mochizuki, like Shima, Dragon Key, like just an old guys containment match, and retire everybody in the company over 45 except for Susumu Kagetora and Dragon Kid is what I would do. And say Magnum can't do a match. Magnum can't wrestle. But if Magnum is sincere, and that he's been very vocal about about wanting to be involved in cleaning up, cleaning up wrestling of the type of people like him, and and I want it's been 20 years, so who knows what Magnum has been through and what type of person he's become out of this. If he is sincerely interested in being a voice of reason, or I don't want to say arbitrator, but being like a window for wrestlers to go to for counsel. If the United Wrestling Alliance wanted to establish something like that and have Magna be involved, I think it would be a win. If he was sincere about it. If it led to, honestly, like if it were me, and again, my first step would be, like, if I was running the company, my first step would be telling the entire roster, and this would mostly be the old guys, but I'm telling the roster that if you've maintained a personal friendship with someone that's on the shit list, the obvious ones, Susumu and Kness. Kness has been on the shit list since he left. But obviously Susumu, he and Susumu are still best friends. They just, the stance has been, you can stay friends, but don't be retweeting each other, and keep it to yourselves. My first thing would be, if you're friends with somebody, if you want to retweet what SB is doing, if you want to reply to SB, Monte, if you go to Mexico and you run into SB and talk, when you want to take a picture, you can put the picture up. That something small like that. It's a minor gesture, but I think that would actually be the logical first step, would be to take any sort of restrictions off the current roster in terms of their personal relationships with these guys.
Because it's
and
kind
then I
of
would stop there.
ridiculous, like just patently ridiculous. Like the fact that like Magnum brings up in this talk show that Okamura dies, and whatever good and bad, and it's mostly bad about Okamura, one wants to say, like, they wanted to honor his memory and go to his shrine. And the fact that Magnum was like, oh, all these Dragongate guys did it, and they had to be super private about it, and they don't want anyone from Okamura Dojo talking about it. Like, there's part of this that's just cognitively just is cult-like behavior, that the breaking that feels like the step, and part of that is the shit list outside of Roderick Strong.
Yeah, no, not well. I'll be in the cold, dead ground before, but no.
I saw Alan make that reference, and I just had to get it on air. I apologize.
Yeah, I would. I mean, again, a lot of these guys, I don't even know what you could do with, especially like the ones that are retired. Like Kness in particular, I know is in really bad shape, and I think is in a wheelchair, and his health is not doing that well, and so he's not going to want to come and appear publicly anyway. And in terms of the wrestlers you could bring back, the ones that are active, not really, maybe Yamamura.
It's really Yamamura and Lindemann. Like, those are the two.
Yamamura, Lindemann, SB Takuma, I'd be okay with, but again, it wouldn't. But I'm not going to be sad if it doesn't.
No, I think it'd be weird for those guys. Like, I've moved on. SPK, when he was there, was my guy, but I don't sit at night and go like, God, what would SB versus Cielo look like? What is Takuma versus I've moved on from them. I love Lindemann, and I'm always gonna. I feel like, if we played Lindemann's career 100 times, we probably got the worst version of it. So I always want what's best for him. I loved Ishida when he was around. I mean, I'd be more curious about Ishida coming back than SB and Taco. I don't need those guys. They left. It hurt in the short term, but I think Dragongate moved on from them. And they haven't done, those two guys specifically, they haven't done enough away from Dragongate for me to go, oh, they should get another shot. They're worth whatever headache might come. I don't see it.
Yeah, yeah, and like I was saying before, that this is the core of them. This is the Jimmy's generation, or the core of the mid card that is lacking. So on paper, the idea, well, you have them come back, and there you go. You've got your mid card core, but they don't have, they haven't built that sort of rapport or reputation with the company anymore. They would be coming back as kind of outsiders, troublemakers, starting. They'd be trying to start from the middle, or try to pick up where they were, and I just don't think. I think from a cohesion standpoint, I don't think it would work.
No, I think it would kind of feel like when Yashi came back and did Berserk, and he was maybe pushed to a degree that made it, I understood what they were doing, but it didn't really work within the context of the promotion. Where the world that year was Doi and Yashi challenging for the Twin Gate belts, and I remember at the time being like, "Oh God, I'd rather see Doi team with anybody else, and I'd rather see Susumu and Kage wrestle anybody else."
Yeah, the company was written super hot too.
Yes,
when that was going on. And Yashi had, brother accomplished a lot. The Aganiso guys accomplished a lot before they left. Like, SB was pushed, but like Takuma wrestled like 18 matches or something like that
on TV. Yeah, probably. I mean, he was only around 6 months.
Yeah, and they've only had 3, 6, 9, 12. They've wrestled cage match, anyways. They've had 16 matches this year. Like,
I'm actually surprised it's that high.
Is that a lot or not a lot? It feels like not a lot.
It's not a lot, but it's more than what they were getting before. And it is a lot more concentrated on AAA versus scrapping together on the Mexican indie scene.
Yeah, they're getting more consistent AAA work than before, and they did.
But it's just TV jobbers. They're just TV jobbers.
Well, yeah, or house show stuff. I mean, I didn't think they would ever show up on WWE TV, and they ended up doing that. Now, the point that I've made, especially about Takuma more so than SB since they left, is you can see. He physically he looks awful, but also you could see what wrestling every day, and by the end of his Dragongate run, having featured matches, you could see what that did to him versus wrestling once or twice a month, and just the polish that was there is completely gone. He doesn't look like a Dragongate trained wrestler anymore in the way that he moves around the ring, whereas Kento still sort of has that, but Taku was so young and so inexperienced that it just didn't. It's like watching a different guy now.
Yeah, were they on the?
Yeah, they made TV about a month ago, and it was kind of nice to see. Quite honestly, it was I didn't.
So what does that? Like, what does that mean? And so they have they have like WWE AAA contracts, or are they?
I don't think so.
I honestly don't.
To my knowledge, they would have to have some sort of contract with WWE proper to get the visa through them. There would have to be something.
They got the US visa through.
I will. Let me see it. I know he posted the visa itself. Let me see if it has the.
I don't know if it was WWE related though. Jay, I don't think them appearing on TV implies that they have a deal. I honest to God, think WWE's goal is to produce a Lucha Libre show with 0 Mexicans at some point. I honest to God believe that, and I think
that would work to their advantage then.
It would, but I don't. I think they were just local in quotations, just local guys that were made available in AAA said, hey, here's some guys you can put on TV. But they weren't exactly factored into anything major. Now, the announcers had notes for them and they were put over as semi-serious AAA competitors. But I think they just made TV the one time. So,
yeah, they also as like a thing, it's worth stating, like the person they were feuding with got fired in pretty public fashion too. Like they were doing a lot of stuff with Mr. Iguana, but most of their work for the last few years has been against Nino Ambergase, and he got fired after attacking a fan. So for them who are already kind of in it as an add-on kind of position, Jay, it's the fact that they're still kind of sticking around with it when AAA has like dropped other like local acts, and I would consider Tokyo Bad Boys kind of like a local act. The fact that they're sticking around, there's someone. I don't know if it's within WWE or it's just someone within AAA or it's just the fact that they make up the numbers, but it's worked out for them to this level.
Tokyo Bad Boys, Kento Nobusan Takuma defeat Mamba, Mocho Kota Jr., and Tito Santana.
It's Tito Santana Jr. Yeah. Who is a member of Poder del Norte, or the former Poder del Norte with Mocha Kota Jr. Yeah, he's the former Soul Rocker.
El Stripper Descarado. Okay. So, I thought it was that Tito Santana, but okay.
I wish.
It throws you off the first time you watch him. Do you think he's going to be that Tito Santana, and then instead he's a former masked guy?
And just real quick on this. So the TV that they made that I remember was the 4-way tag title match. It was Pagano and Psycho Clown, and the Motor City Machine Guns and Kento and Takuma and another team who I can't think of. But that was the second AAA taping. That was before they had found their footing and started just putting white guys under masks. And I don't believe they've made TV since. And if they have, it wasn't,
Is it AAA on Fox?
Yeah,
is the TV show? Because it looks like they just had La Parka and Mr. Iguana defeat the Money Machine and Nueva Generación Dinamita. Forestero and Sanson defeat Kento and Takuma at the AAA on Fox number 17, according to Cage Match. But
okay, so they might have made TV there as well. Yeah.
But I mean, it's essentially like you could tell from just looking at it, Jay. They're not positioned with any sort of booking power or anything. They're there to fill the cards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I know I said probably 2 years ago. Actually, like I said, when Takuma left, I was like, it's okay that Takuma left because we got Ryoya, and Ryoya can do everything that Takuma can do, and that worked out. But it would also be nice to also have Takuma around to be one of the filler Bravegate defenses. So like defense number 12 or 13 doesn't have to be Punch Tominaga or something like that. You know what I mean? So from that side of things, yeah, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing, but I don't see it happening. Maybe Shima for one match. I don't even know who else is even still active. Everybody else left on really bad terms.
Yeah, like Tanyan's not showing back up, and I don't know if this is going to do anything.
He's permanent shit list for sure. Like Tanizaki and Gamma for sure are like the 100% forever shit list.
What about Sakamoto?
Everybody else. Kazuma?
Yeah.
Sakamoto? Oh, he left very professionally.
Okay, that's what I thought. I always liked him. I miss him around. I don't know. I'd like to see him back.
So the thing about Kazuma the rumor about Kazuma was, he was always a freelancer. He was on he was on a freelance contract, agreed upon dates ahead of time, but was never locked down on contracts. He could go at any time he wanted to, but he was pro enough that if he was going to go, he was going to, do it right. But I guess when he went to negotiate his Glate deal while still working Dragongate, he was clear to do it because he didn't have a contract, so it wasn't, anything shady there. But the rumor was that he brought Ishida along, and that's what planted the seed. That's what planted the seed in Ishida. Because if you remember, the year before Ishida left, Ishida was gone for a while and then came back with a quote-unquote knee injury. So apparently, again, this is all a legend. I don't know if this is true or not, but that in terms of the timing, that may have been what started the trouble with Ishida, so that may have been a negative against Kazma. But he was always supposed to finish at Worlds. They dropped the tag titles. He finished up, was done with obligations, and went to Glade. So that was it. So like I don't see any personal problems or issues that would hinder him from coming back.
I'd take him back
If
in
you
a
want.
heartbeat. I think he's great.
I mean, who knows what? God, it's been
5 years.
5 years in Glade.
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know. Who knows what 5 years in Glade can do a lot to a person. Look at like I don't Shiva, man. I mean, like he's got nothing. Like he's got no juice. Like he struggled
It
to
was,
sell out a Shinjuku Face show.
yeah, it's also like I know your viewing patterns, the last 12 months of him with Glade, like basically the countdown for when Kaz Hayashi left with him, it was all a real kind of big struggle. It was a wonder that Lindemann was able to get what he could out of him, to be honest.
Well, he was fucked. Like his shoulder was fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had to have a big surgery. But like if he didn't, like I can't think of a retirement match for him that could sell out Korakuen Hall.
Well, with or without the Dragongate guys?
Without,
I have no idea. I mean, you're talking about probably like Sasuke and Shinzaki coming in at that point.
Mm.
And that won't sell 10,000. That won't sell 1,100 tickets, let alone 1,500.
Yeah, because Shingo.
But they did that.
Would
They did it a
Shingo
few years
work
ago. It
that?
didn't sell out.
Would Shingo work that for Shima?
Well, Shingo, yeah, he would. You pay him, yeah.
I mean, he's got a family now to support. Yeah.
And
But
she wants babies.
They did that for Shima's
He's gotta get
anniversary
to
a few
work.
years ago, and it didn't move a number. It was just another bad Glade Korakuen show.
Yeah, and on his own, and like he doesn't have like the connections are not. Look at the people on his Shinjuku Face show. Like he's burned.
I was actually kind of surprised by the amount.
Like he's working with people like Sugi-san, and like I mean, there's a connection there, but at the same time, like, fuck, man, I don't know. Like, so I think it kind for him. I don't know. It's sad. Unless it was going to be Shima Magnum Tokyo, right? But Magnum has, Magnum walks with a stick, so I don't think that even like a 5-minute exhibition could happen.
Mm-hmm. Would he go so far as going Onita for it if he would have to?
Onita?
Yeah, because I'm trying to think of names that could get to 1,500.
But there's no like connection there for like a retirement match for Shima.
Yeah, I know. I was just trying to think of names of that era that could even really do that, and it's not like Yoshino, like he did that one exhibition on his produce show, but it seems like that either the money's not there or his neck's not there. It's not like you can get Yoshino back out for it.
Yeah, he's not going to come back. The Musubi shop is doing well, and
hey, good for him considering
like
how things were looking.
He's in good shape. He could probably do a match, but it wouldn't top what his retirement match was.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there was a time where doing it to spite Dragongate was probably a little appealing to him, but I think that time has passed now. To where he doesn't want to tarnish what he did, how he went out. Yoshino's one that would be like Bravegate commissioner.
That's what I was going to kind of ask you. Like now he is completely detached from Glade, and I know at least since we've been talking, the two of us, Jay, Yoshino's position has been like a topic of like where things were looking like at one time to where things kind of falled out there. It does kind of feel like that Bravegate commissioner, or at least being a sounding board or someone like that, at least, yeah, the way that you talked about like potential for Magnum Tokyo to be in, like having him back in the fold, I feel like, or at least just in a little sort of way, if he's willing to, seems like that could have been an easy optic win for them at this time. Now that that's possible.
He wouldn't. He won't do it.
Well, then there we go.
Yeah, but like
the planes changed on him. It seemed.
This is the thing, is that there does need to be real meaningful change at the management level, for a lot of these relationships to be mendable, and for the mental health of the company to improve. There needs to be sincere change that I don't, it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed yet. It's been 29 years. So, pro wrestling, people, unless TKO buys it, it's still wrestling people running a wrestling company. So, it's not unique to Dragon Gate. This is, wrestling people running wrestling companies. It's still everybody is still a fucking carny, with an ego and greed and all the other things that are attached to it. So I don't know. Regardless of what promotion you're a fan of, you probably shouldn't hold your breath, because even when the old people die, sorry, I realize this is the entire plot to Persona 5, but young people growing up to be shitty adults and trying to break that cycle. Shitty adults will always find at least one or two impressionable young people and turn them into shitty adults to keep the cycle going. So
yeah, and it takes a lot. Like the thing that at least to put a bow on the Magnum thing, the thing, like when I was going through the YouTube and going through the reporting and all of this around it, and not to speak for Case, or the thing that really came very clear to me, and it makes sense. Like I know that at least with you, Jay, professionally, you deal a little bit with some aspects of it, is company culture when it gets calcified becomes so impossible to be able to clean up and be able to reset on a healthy kind of manner, and to decalcify some of these traits. There are certain people that I think that if you're interested in the long term, like health and future of the promotion, there are certain names that feel like that they kind of need to get a move on, if only for the fact of company culture, but it's not going to happen because of the Persona 5 thing, as you laid it out,
yeah, I don't know, that's I want the old guys to go away. Is where my current stance right now. Like I know there's like the idea of doing like Kikta and Mochizuki at one of the June shows. This is just a fan idea, not like an actual idea. And I just like, I never want to see that. Never want to see we're going to roll out Mochizuki for a Korakuen Hall title match ever again. Like, I just don't want to see it. Give it to Junior instead. Like, we're going to give it to Mochizuki because we want to sell ticket. We want to pop a crowd for Korakuen Hall. Like, I'm so over it. Like, go away. All the old guys need, like, the Asia tag stuff has just fucking disgusted me. I've hated all of it. And it's
you don't like
Genki
Horiguchi being pushed like 1974 Antonio Inoki, where we're closing shows with him now? I mean, Genki's, historically one of my favorite wrestlers ever. I cannot stand him right now. I hate the sight of Genki Horiguchi.
I hate it. I hate all of it. And I hate the idea that like they're not even like they're going to give it back to Kato Nishin to go and lose in All Japan. Like the old guy, like the old guys get to have their fun, and and get to add their name to the list with Ricky Dozan and Inoki, but then they give it when it comes time, then we'll give it back to the young guys so they can go and they can go to the other promotion and lose. So not only do they, for the All Japan fans that paid attention, oh, this is the team that won our titles, then went and lost them to senior citizens. But then when they get them back, they came back here and then lost in their first defense here too. Like fuck off with that.
And
I don't know.
not
You
even do
remember
the fun
the
thing of making it a triple crown briefly and have Jackie and Rita drop it, because why not
oh
go
yeah,
and
yeah,
send
that's the
your
other
hot
thing.
tag team and pick up new fans? Why not do that?
Well, well, yeah, because then they would have, because obviously the tag title tier list is the Asia tag are the most important. Then the Okinawa tag belts are second tier, and then the Twin Gate is distant third in terms of importance. So yeah, no, can't have Jackie Rita win those. Do you remember the January? There were some January network shows. I don't know if you guys watched the wrestler commentary at all, but there was compulsory wrestler commentary in January because one of
Right, yeah.
the other, God, Mochizuki was so fucking insufferable on those. There was like I did Japanese commentary with him last year on the Kobe show before World on wrestler commentary, and every time I tried to feed him something, he would turn and like talk about himself, and I thought it was like, can you please like follow me here and not talk about yourself? And it was kind of annoying, but I didn't realize how bad it was until those shows
Is
where
this
he's
senior
like,
or junior?
this is senior.
Okay.
And actually, I got a story about Junior too. So like when Junior had Junior was in the newspaper got the award from Himeji for saving the castle from getting burned down. Like, and that was on Yahoo News. Like, my manager, who does not pay any attention to wrestling or anything like that, sent me a DM me on Slack. She's like, "Is this Dragongate? Is the place you work? Right? Is this one of your wrestlers? He's so cool. His sense of justice." Like he was like bona fide hero, and like that. Then news came out on the day of Porkin, so I'm sitting there and we were talking, and like, Junior, you're a hero. You can make something out of this. And like Dad and Kondo walked by and like, yeah, if it was anybody else but Junior, they'd make something of it. And then just kept walking. I'm like, what the fuck was that? And then there was the commentary on one of the January shows. It was a young guy's tag. I don't know. It was like one of the undercard throwaway tags. I don't remember who it was, but they noted. He's like, yeah, everybody in this match is under 30. And he looks at it, and there's Don Fuji with him, and they're like, yeah, well, we were 30. The place was sold out, and we were on top. I was like,
I hate that.
why are you like don't fucking say that. It's like it. And it's like it's like Muto. Like, so there's people like Muto where they have to. You can't deny how great they are as wrestlers. Like, there's no denying that. But at the same time, the person that believes it the most is Muto himself.
Oh, sure.
And like it soured me a lot on Mochizuki, and then the Asia tag stuff. Like I said, if anyone over 45 that isn't in Paradox just needs to go away. Susumu Kage, Dragon Kid can stay, but everybody else, like, I'm done. I have no use for them anymore. Like, I'm done with them. I would retire them all in one match. Like this 6-man that's coming up next month with Sasuke and Tiger Mask and all that. Like, can I just go to Can I go to the bathroom for that match? Like, I have no time for this stuff anymore. With the rest of the state that things are in, like, there's no time for this anymore. Like, that should be used to, like, I don't know, give Fuda a match, or use that as an angle to put Montaigne in, or just do literally anything else with that time. But yeah.
Well, I had
Young
one
guys gotta
person I
work
wanted.
harder.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I had one last thing I
I'm
wanted
done.
to ask you about before we close things out here. I have a new favorite wrestler in Dragon Gate, and I have been shocked and at the same time so pleased to see how well he has adapted to the kind of scenario and taking a character that I think that for Case and I, at least for what we see a lot in the United States, if this kind of character was in the United States, we'd lump him with Dan the Dad and Danhausen and all of those. But Jiro
Yeah,
Shimbashi, I
Johnson
feel
Florida
like
has been Johnson Florida has
sorry,
been great. I agree.
Johnson
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 Florida.
Florida. He cracked up so bad during the Jiro matches. It's so good. But I'm obsessed with Jiro Shimbashi at this point.
Yeah, it's he's done a great job with it. Um, this is one of those things that um, he's killed it so far. But because it's a character, it's going to be really dependent on how far this goes. Because the closest I know, people are saying he's inheriting Ishikawa's spot, right? But I think it's a closer comparison to compare him to the Florida brothers, because the Florida brothers were a very specific act, very specific gimmick. And a lot of people would say, people that were watching at the time would say the Florida brothers were one of the greatest comedy acts of all time and produced some of the greatest comedy matches of all time. Is that a fair assessment?
I'm much higher on Florida Brothers than Case is.
Yeah, everybody
Case
likes
is,
them more than me. I'm not a Florida Brothers guy.
Okay. The thing that people don't pay attention to is the fact that the Florida brothers run was only 2.5 years, and all of the memorable Florida brothers stuff happened within the first 12 months. And then the 12 months after that, they were dead in the water. And that is what Jiro has to avoid on this. If he can, at some point, he's going to have to evolve out of what he's doing right now. And if he can successfully maneuver that, and, you know, and it can be something, he gets fired from the company and has to become something else. But if he can turn into just Jiro Shimbashi, the wrestler, and not Jiro Shimbashi, the fighting salaryman, and he can do it with the level of ability that he's shown so far, then he'll be an all-timer. But he's going to have to successfully navigate that. He's killed it so far, but he's killed it within a very specific gimmick and type of match.
he's the framework he's excelled in. Like I thought that
Yes, 100%.
the Sawa match yesterday, I thought that was actually like such a step forward because it was based all in like the salaryman stuff and like the boss with this. But when we've seen him have like glimpses teaming with Kimura and like this, that he actually does have a good and varied skill set that it's been nice to see. I guess like my big thing is he's already faced the career woman, he's faced his supervisor. Does the CEO have to be Senshiro Takagi, or do we are we going to try to get like a real big gag one in for Kobe World?
Yeah, World is interesting because he's not a Warigate champion.
No.
So we gotta, and that's actually the biggest indictment against him, is that he's lost 4 straight Warigate matches, and which is and that's a shoot. So if he was funnier than Yosuke, he'd be champion right now. I don't know. Like the play is actually for me it should be Natsupoi. It should
that would be funny.
It's Jiro versus X for the ORI gate, and you get Shingo's music, and Shingo's back to take the ORI gate back. I was champion when I left the company. I never lost that title. I'm going to take it back. God, fuck that. This is who you're facing. And then it's Natsupoi, but the champion should be Yosuke, and then this is real women's wrestling. You get Natsupoi versus Yosuke, but it could be Natsupoi versus Jiro. But I don't know who you make who the CEO is. Maybe the CEO is Magnum Tokyo. There you go.
Yeah,
The big boss.
because it definitely
The
would have
big
been
boss.
Okamura 10 years ago, so Magnum could fill that role.
It would 100%. There was a lot of Floyd Brothers versus Okamura and Taru in full karate gear matches.
Yeah.
If they could do, I don't know who else it could be. It could be. Maybe or no, they love the fucking Okinawa stuff, so it would be like Mozoku Tominaga or something.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, what would they do? I was like, okay, other CEOs are like, okay, yeah, no, Tanahashi is not coming out for this thing. Like, that's not happening, even though he's now the most well-known wrestling CEO right now. That's why my brain went to like Shinshiro Takagi, or maybe if Great Kojika is able to get into the ring. But
Actually,
go ahead.
He should wrestle Kanemaru Ichikawa, because Ichikawa, even though he's retired,
Mm-hmm.
he's because this is how good he is. He could come out of retirement and wrestle a match, and then just the match would be over, and no one would care. No one would ever say anything again, because it's so in character for him to just unretire
Yes,
and come and
that
wrestle
would
a
rule.
match.
Yeah,
So like that's 100% what they should. It's 100% what they should do. But
yeah, no, you sold me on it. I'm never going to turn down a chance for another Stalker Chikawa match. So he's
you can't. You know why they can't. Yeah, I found out why they changed his name. I don't is because they had to change his name because you can't say stalker on TV anymore for compliance reasons. So that's why they had to change his name. It wasn't a trademark or anything like that. It was the compliance reasons they had to change his name, because stalking is a very serious. They're taking stalking seriously, and that it's a triggering word, so you can't say it. So I'm more favorable of the name change now that I know the actual reason, and not it wasn't just petty trademark reasons.
Sure. Yeah. I all the while thought that it was all because of the Takeshi guy, that what he looked like. I thought it was all linked to like Beat Takano and all that.
Well, he looked like the guy they named him after.
Right.
That's why they changed the name to whatever the guy's name was. That's how they came up with the new name. The Stalker Ichikawa was the character, the original Stalker Ichikawa character was based on that. But the word stalker itself was no
good.
NG, yeah.
Well, Jay, we actually, I think for one of these shows, we have crossed over the 3-hour mark pretty firmly this time. We don't want to take up any more of your. Oh no! Thank you so much for all of your time.
That's why we do this.
Yeah. No. Is there anything you wanted to touch on before we get out of here?
Let me think. There's no show to promote.
Yeah, usually that's what we'd be doing at this time.
Yeah, we talked about Dia, we talked about Magnum, we talked about the current state of things.
The all-important All-Asia Tag Team titles. We've covered the most important thing in the company.
Well, you guys said you didn't go to Vegas, so I can't ask you how Vegas went.
No comment on Rita method. I wasn't going to get on a flight.
I actually did want to bring, because Case, you hated the Ishin Mathers finish on that Corkin Hall show, if I'm not mistaken. There was like a low blow finish.
Yeah, but that was more just like why am I being subjected to all of this heel stuff? This sucks.
I think it was like that was the show that had like the 3 in a row heel finishes on it.
Yeah, I wanted to tell a story about that actually. Please. Because I've been talking with Ho-Ho about the card for the Vegas show, and of course they didn't decide anything until 2 weeks before the show. But there's going to be a singles match with Marcus. We don't know against who. So when they did that low blow, I was like, oh, okay, they're going to do Ishin versus Marcus in Vegas. This makes sense. It's a continuation. You could have Marcus he can go cut a promo backstage or on Twitter and be like, Ishin, you ruined my last day in Japan, so I'm going to ruin your trip to the U.S. I want you at Gate of Sin City in Vegas. And then so I think I even fed Ho Ho. I was like, well, the match you got to book. And I thought 100% they were doing it. And then after the show, I was like, so you're doing Marcus Resolution? Like, no, I'm not doing that. I was so mad. I was so mad about that.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
Yeah, no, I was mad too. It doesn't make any sense.
It's so. There's another one too on that. Like, I was like, who are you wrestling? He's like, it's going to be random tag. Me, Estrella, the referee's son, the kid he wrestled last year, Reese Maddox, and then this guy that Ultimo. I was like, okay, so who are the teams? He's like, I don't know, it doesn't matter. I was like, well, why don't you team with the kid you wrestled last year? Tell the kid to cut a promo and say, Ho Ho, you wrestled me last year, and I learned a lot from it, and I want to prove to you I want to show you how much better I am, or I want a chance to wrestle and learn from you as your partner and do a tag match on that. It is absolutely meaningless, but at least it's something, right? And no, we're not going to do that. I'm just like, I don't know. It's the little things. It's those little bits of laziness that need to go away.
I felt watching the Corkin yesterday. I felt like the first hour of that show was a complete waste of time because the Giro stuff is fine, but it's ultimately not why I'm watching a Dragongate show. And so to have a show that, has that interminably long vibes versus unaffiliated match, and then the Giro stuff, and then an old guys tag, and then the triple threat match, which was fine, but they didn't do an angle with Monte or Cielo afterward, so it didn't go anywhere. And it wasn't really until Hyo versus Amare where I was like, oh, I'm watching a Cork and Hall show now. All right, business has picked up. It's just they have real issues right now.
Yeah, there was nothing inherently wrong with it. You can watch this Vibes match in a vacuum, and everybody, Takashi was funny, and Punch did the same thing he did. Gyuchi was impressive, blah blah blah. Jiro was funny. I don't like Sawa, but Ho Ho was like laughing his ass off next to me on that match. Someone liked it. So there was nothing wrong with it. The old guys match went 5 minutes, and Kikuta hit Don Fuji really really hard, so that was cool. So like there's nothing, and the three-way was interesting. So there was like individually there's nothing wrong with any of these matches. You could tune into the show and watch any of these midway through any of these matches and probably be entertained. But the fact is we can make this the same exact statement about like every single Cork and Hall show for like the last 2 years, in that you can tune in, you can have a good time, but at the same time, if you missed it, you didn't miss anything. And that's that and Music Man's AI banners. Those are the two things.
Not good.
The thing that's also striking me is Tokyo Infinity Hectopascal in for Dangerous Gate. Yeah. I get the monsoon and the typhoons and that now is kind of a time that the company's changing things around for it, but things like that, I'm going to call it Tokyo Infinite Pedro Pascal just accidentally once. Like it just, some things they seem to be just doing things for the sake of doing things at this point.
It's 100% Music Man putting Stormgate into, give me a Spanish or English, give me a word to describe a storm, and it's what GPT gave him, and so that's what the show's called right now. It is 100% an AI generated show name, because there is no. I know the people that are involved with naming the show. There is no way they came up with that on their own.
Yeah, I didn't. Sorry.
They came up with Gate of Sin City for Vegas, like the laziest possible name you could have for a show in Las Vegas. There's no way they came up with Hector Pascal on their own.
Yeah, well, we'll for sure have you back on well before Tokyo Infinite Hectopascal. But Jay, thank you again for all of your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Golden Week vacation, man.
My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines. And we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? Are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy every week on the Voice of Wrestling Network.